They mocked the black cat for bonding with one tiny beast, until every legendary creature knelt before her. Nobody wanted to stand beside Velune, not because she was rude, not because she was weak, but because she was a black cat. Among the kingdoms of Etheria, an old superstition had survived for centuries. Black cats brought misfortune. Parents whispered it to their kittens. Teachers denied believing it, yet quietly seated black-furred students alone. Merchants crossed the street whenever one passed. Even children, too young to understand hatred, learned to stare. Velune had lived with those stares her entire life. She had stopped asking why. Instead, she greeted everyone with the same gentle smile every morning, hoping that one day someone would smile back. Few ever did. Her long midnight fur shimmered with soft blue highlights whenever sunlight touched it, making her look as though pieces of the evening sky had woven themselves into her coat. Her emerald eyes carried a quiet kindness that never seemed to fade, even after years of cruel whispers. She wasn't beautiful in the loud, attention-grabbing way many admired. She was beautiful like moonlight reflecting across a calm lake. Soft, peaceful, impossible to forget. This morning, Mooncrest Academy buzzed with excitement. Thousands of young cats filled the enormous marble courtyard beneath fluttering banners painted in pastel blues, lavender, and gold. Floating crystal lanterns drifted lazily overhead. Cherry blossom petals danced through the air. Beyond the academy stood the towering silverwood forest, where ancient magical beasts had once roamed before vanishing hundreds of years ago. Today was Awakening Day, the single most important day in every student's life. At 16 years old, every cat would form a lifelong bond with a magical beast. Some bonded with wolves, others with falcons. Rare students awakened griffins or crystal lions. Those fortunate enough to receive legendary companions often became heroes, generals, or royal guardians. Every student dreamed of hearing their name called. Every student, except Velune. She feared hers. As students gathered in excited groups, familiar laughter echoed through the courtyard. There she is. Don't stand too close. I heard bad luck spreads. My mother says black cats curse everyone around them. Velune lowered her ears. She had heard those words so many times they no longer surprised her. Still, they hurt. A cheerful orange tabby hurried past carrying a basket of flowers. As he accidentally brushed Velune's shoulder, he immediately froze. Oh no. He quickly stepped backward. I'm sorry. He wasn't apologizing for bumping into her. He was apologizing because he'd touched her. His friends grabbed him and hurried away. Velune watched them disappear into the crowd. It's okay. She wasn't sure if anyone heard her. A warm breeze carried the scent of blooming lavender across the academy gardens. Velune closed her eyes for just a moment. She imagined what it would feel like to belong. A loud trumpet echoed across the courtyard. Every conversation stopped. Headmaster Cedric Thornclaw stepped onto the grand platform. The silver-furred cat wore flowing ivory robes trimmed with sapphire thread. His voice carried effortlessly across the academy. Welcome, students. Today, destiny chooses your path. Excited whispers rippled through the crowd. Cedric raised one paw. The strength of your bond will never depend solely upon power. Velune almost smiled. Maybe, just maybe, he believed that. The strength of your heart determines the future. For a brief moment, hope flickered inside her chest. Then Cedric's golden eyes drifted toward her. Only for an instant. His smile faded almost imperceptibly. Then he looked away. The warmth vanished. Velune noticed. She always noticed. One by one, students climbed the crystal staircase. The awakening stone glowed beneath their paws. Brilliant flashes illuminated the courtyard. A grey tabby awakened an iron wolf. Cheers erupted. A cream-colored Persian bonded with twin frost falcons. Even louder applause. Another student received an ember lynx. Teachers nodded proudly. Parents cried with joy. Every awakening filled the courtyard with celebration. Velune clapped for every single student, even those who had mocked her minutes earlier. Finally, Seraphine Veilbloom. The crowd practically exploded before she even reached the platform. Everyone knew Seraphine. Elegant, graceful, brilliant. Her snow-white Persian fur looked almost radiant beneath the morning sun. Every step she took seemed practiced to perfection. She placed one paw upon the crystal. Golden light burst into the sky. Wind rushed across the courtyard. From above, an enormous creature descended. Its wings shimmered like polished diamonds. Its body resembled a majestic snow leopard crossed with a falcon. Crystals sparkled across its feathers. The majestic beast landed gracefully beside Seraphine before lowering its head. The academy erupted. A crystal griffin. Incredible. I've only seen those in history books. She's destined for the royal guard. Seraphine smiled confidently as the creature affectionately rubbed its face against hers. She accepted the admiration as though it was simply expected. Her pale blue eyes wandered across the crowd, until they settled on Velune. A tiny smile curled across her lips. Not a kind one. The kind that promised humiliation. More awakenings followed. Powerful beasts appeared one after another. Thunder rams, moonwolves, golden stags, shadow falcons. Each unveiling brought louder applause than the last. Then, the headmaster looked down at the final parchment. His voice echoed across the courtyard. Velune Ashvale. Silence. No cheers. No applause. Only whispers. The black cat. I wonder what curse she'll summon. Probably nothing. Velune inhaled slowly. Her legs trembled, but she forced herself forward. Every step toward the crystal felt heavier than the last. She placed her paw upon the ancient stone. Nothing happened. The courtyard remained silent. 1 second. 2. 3. Students exchanged amused glances. Someone giggled. Then another. The laughter slowly spread. Heat rose into Velune's face. Had she failed? Could someone truly awaken? Nothing. Just as Dispy began tightening around her heart, a tiny silver light floated from the crystal. It drifted gently into the air like a firefly. The glowing orb landed softly before Velune. With a tiny puff of sparkling dust, something appeared. It was no larger than a kitten. Round ears. Soft midnight fur sprinkled with tiny silver specks that looked like stars. Two oversized silver eyes blinked curiously. Tiny feathered wings fluttered. They were far too small to lift its fluffy body. The little creature looked up at Velune. Its ears twitched. Then it waddled forward on clumsy little paws. Without hesitation, it climbed into her arms, curled against her chest, and let out the smallest, sweetest sound. MRP. The entire academy stared. One student burst into laughter, then another. Within seconds, the whole courtyard echoed with mocking voices. What is that? It looks like a stuffed toy. That's supposed to be a magical beast. I've seen baby rabbits scarier than that. Seraphine covered her mouth to hide a laugh. Oh, Velune. She stepped closer, her magnificent crystal griffin towering behind her. I didn't think destiny could be this cruel. More laughter followed. The tiny creature flinched. Its silver eyes filled with fear. It buried its face deeper into Velune's fur. Velune looked down at the trembling little companion. She could feel its tiny heartbeat racing. She gently wrapped both arms around it. It's okay, she whispered softly. You don't have to be afraid. The creature looked up at her. Its frightened eyes slowly relaxed. It gave one tiny, trusting nuzzle beneath her chin. At that exact moment, far beyond Mooncrest Academy, deep within the forgotten Silverwood Forest, an ancient stone shrine that had remained untouched for 1,000 years, cracked. One faint silver rune began to glow. Then another, and somewhere beneath the roots of the oldest tree in the forest, something enormous opened one eye. Velune barely noticed the laughter anymore. All she could hear was the tiny creature trembling against her chest. Its little paws clung tightly to her academy robe as though she were the only safe place in the world. The laughter echoed around the marble courtyard. Some students wiped tears from their eyes. Others pointed openly. Even several teachers exchanged disappointed glances. The magical beast looked less like a warrior, and more like a fluffy toy someone had accidentally brought to the ceremony. Headmaster Cedric cleared his throat. The awakening ceremony has concluded. His voice remained calm, professional, but there was something else hidden beneath it. Disappointment. The bonded creature has not been identified within any known magical bestiary. One of the professors adjusted his spectacles. No combat classification. Another shook his head. No elemental affinity. A third sighed. No historical records. Cedric looked directly at Velune. Until further notice. Your companion shall be registered as an unknown lesser familiar. The words landed like stones. Unknown. Lesser. Several students snickered again. Seraphine stepped closer, her crystal griffin standing proudly behind her. Its crystalline wings reflected rainbows across the courtyard. My deepest condolences, Velune. Her voice sounded sweet. Too sweet. I know how much you hope for something useful. Another wave of laughter followed. Velune remained silent. Instead, she gently stroked the tiny creature's soft fur. You have a name now. The little creature blinked. Lumo. Its silver eyes widened. MRP. I think it suits you. Lumo's tiny tail wagged. For the first time since appearing, it smiled. It wasn't a powerful smile. It wasn't magical. It was simply happy. The crowd laughed even harder. She named it. She's actually keeping it. What else would she do? Throw it back. Someone imitated Lumo's tiny squeak. Another pretended to cuddle an invisible stuffed animal. Velune ignored every word. As long as Lumo wasn't afraid anymore, nothing else mattered. The academy bell rang. Students began leaving the courtyard in excited groups. Many were already discussing training schedules with their new companions. Moonwolves raced across the grass. Falcons soared into the sky. Crystal antlers sparkled beneath flowering cherry trees. The campus had transformed into a living parade of magnificent magical beasts. Only Velune walked alone. Lumo peeked over her shoulder, staring curiously at every passing creature. A baby frost wolf barked playfully. Lumo gave a tiny wave. The wolf immediately hid behind its owner. Sorry. Its owner hurried away. Lumo slowly lowered its paw. Velune noticed. They don't know you yet. Lumo looked up. They'll see how wonderful you are someday. The little creature smiled again. That afternoon, Mooncrest Academy held its traditional orientation inside the Grand Beast Hall. Thousands of pastel banners hung from the towering ceiling. Each banner displayed one of the ancient guardian beasts. Dragons, phoenixes, griffins, moonlions, celestial wolves. Creatures nobody had seen for centuries. Professor Hazelwisk stood before the students. As beast keepers, your companions are your family. She smiled warmly. You must feed them. Protect them. And above all, earn their trust. Velune listened carefully. Everything mattered. Every lesson. Every detail. She wrote pages of notes. Meanwhile, Seraphine leaned comfortably against her chair, barely listening. Her crystal griffin perched proudly beside her, occasionally spreading its shimmering wings. Whenever it did, students gasped in admiration. Professor Hazelwisk continued. Tomorrow, you will all enter Whispering Grove. Several students straightened immediately. It will be your first practical examination. You are not expected to defeat monsters. You are only expected to demonstrate teamwork with your companions. Someone raised a paw. What happens if our beast refuses to fight? The professor smiled. Then your bond is incomplete. Another student asked. What if our beast runs away? Then you must earn its courage. Several students glanced toward Velune. One whispered just loudly enough to be heard. I think hers might hide behind a flower. More laughter. Professor Hazelwhisk frowned. Enough. The room became quiet. She looked toward Velune. For every legendary beast that has existed, there was once a frightened child. Velune blinked. The professor offered the faintest smile. It lasted only a second, but it meant everything. Someone believed, even if only a little. Classes ended just before sunset. The academy grounds slowly emptied. Students returned to their dormitories. Velune's room sat in the oldest wing of Mooncrest Academy. Most students avoided that hallway, not because it was haunted, because she lived there. She opened the small wooden door. The room was simple. A neatly made bed, books stacked carefully on shelves, pressed flowers hanging beside the window. Everything smelled faintly of lavender. Lumo immediately jumped onto the bed. It bounced twice, then rolled onto its back. Emma happy. Velune laughed. A genuine laugh. The first one she'd shared all day. You like it? Lumo nodded enthusiastically. Then something caught its attention. The moon. Outside the window. The first full moon of spring had begun rising above Silverwood Forest. Lumo slowly climbed onto the windowsill. Its expression changed. It no longer looked playful. It looked curious, as though it recognized something. Velune joined it. The moon is beautiful tonight. Lumo quietly placed one tiny paw against the glass. The silver specks scattered through its fur began glowing. Very softly, Velune tilted her head. Lumo. The glow intensified. Tiny silver symbols appeared beneath its paws. Beautiful circles. Ancient patterns. Almost like flowing vines made of starlight. The room suddenly became very still. Outside, every cricket stopped singing. Every owl fell silent. Even the wind seemed to dissipate. Then, Lumo looked toward Silverwood Forest. Far beyond the academy walls, its silver eyes widened. Emma Api. A single beam of moonlight descended through the clouds. It landed deep inside the ancient forest. At exactly the same moment, the glowing symbols beneath Lumo's paws answered. Thousands of tiny silver lights drifted upward into the night sky. Velune gasped. What is happening? She couldn't possibly know. Miles away, hidden beneath enormous roots older than kingdoms themselves, the ancient shrine continued glowing. Stone cracked. Vines withered instantly. Dust that hadn't moved for centuries fell away. One colossal paw slowly shifted. Birds erupted into flight across the forest. An enormous eye, brilliant silver, opened completely. It looked toward Mooncrest Academy, toward one tiny room, toward one tiny creature, and toward the young black cat standing beside it. A deep voice, older than history itself, echoed through the forgotten sanctuary. So, the Moonkeeper has finally returned. Velune barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the silver light that had surrounded Lumo. She heard that ancient voice echoing through the darkness. The Moonkeeper has finally returned. The words didn't make sense. She had never heard the title before. She was just Velune, an ordinary student, a lonely black cat who had somehow bonded with the weakest magical creature anyone had ever seen. I must have imagined it. Lumo yawned from the pillow beside her. The little creature stretched its tiny wings before rolling onto its back with a sleepy squeak. Emma Api. Velune smiled. At least one of us slept well. The academy bell rang before sunrise. Mooncrest Academy came alive with excitement. Today's practical examination was the first chance for every student to prove their beast bond. Groups gathered outside the eastern gate. Moonwolves howled proudly. Crystal griffins stretched their wings. Golden rams pawed impatiently at the earth. Velune quietly joined the crowd with Lumo perched on her shoulder. Almost immediately, the whispers began. She's really bringing that thing. I thought she'd be too embarrassed. My little sister's stuffed rabbit looks tougher. Lumo lowered its ears. Velune gently scratched beneath its chin. They are only talking because they don't know you. Lumo looked up. Its silver eyes softened. Professor Hazelwhisk stood before the enormous academy gates. Behind her stretched Whispering Grove. Unlike Silverwood Forest, this woodland was considered safe. Mostly, towering pastel-colored trees shimmered beneath the morning sun. Blue leaves drifted gently through the air. Crystal flowers glowed softly beneath every branch. Tiny glowing butterflies floated between vines covered in silver blossoms. It looked like a dream, but every student knew. The forest watched. Professor Hazelwhisk raised her voice. Today's examination is simple. You will enter the grove in pairs. You will locate one moon blossom. You will safely return before sunset. She paused. No fighting. No competing. No sabotaging another student. Her eyes lingered briefly on Seraphine. Your score depends entirely on how well you cooperate with your companion. Seraphine smiled innocently. Of course, Professor. The sweetness in her voice fooled no one. Students drew lots to determine partners. Velune quietly reached into the wooden box. When she unfolded her paper, blank, Professor Hazelwhisk frowned. It appears we have an odd number. A few students exchanged amused smiles. Seraphine sighed dramatically. What unfortunate luck. Another student muttered. Figures. Professor Hazelwhisk looked apologetic. You'll have to complete today's trial alone. Velune nodded politely. I understand. Truthfully, she preferred it. The giant academy gates slowly opened. Students disappeared into Whispering Grove. Within minutes, the forest swallowed every voice. Only birdsong remained. Velune walked carefully along an old moss-covered trail. Lumo sat happily on her shoulder, staring at everything with wide-eyed wonder. The little creature gasped every few seconds. MRP. A glowing butterfly. MRP. A sparkling mushroom. MRP. A squirrel with rainbow-colored ears. Velune laughed softly. You really like everything, don't you? Lumo nodded so enthusiastically it almost fell off her shoulder. Elsewhere, Seraphine wasn't interested in flowers. She had already found 3 moon blossoms. Her crystal griffin sniffed the air confidently. We'll finish first. One of her classmates smiled nervously. You always do. She smiled. Some students are simply born for greatness. Her eyes drifted toward the deeper forest. I wonder how long the black cat lasts. Back on the northern trail, Velune finally spotted a moon blossom. Its pale silver petals glowed beneath a fallen log. There you are. She carefully knelt. Don't damage the roots. Lumo leaned closer. Then, its ears suddenly stood straight up. MRP. What is it? The tiny creature stayed into the trees. Not frightened. Curious. Something moved. Bushes rustled. Branches shifted. Velune slowly stood. Out from between the trees stepped a massive moonstag. Its antlers shimmered like polished crystal. Silver vines curled around its legs. Its body stood nearly twice Velune's height. She froze. Moonstags were gentle. Usually. But they were fiercely territorial. One wrong movement could send a student to the academy hospital. Lumo quietly climbed down from Velune's shoulder. No. Velune whispered. Come back. Instead, Lumo slowly walked toward the enormous creature. The moonstag lowered its head. Its glowing eyes examined the tiny fluff ball. Several long seconds passed. Velune barely breathed. Then, something impossible happened. The gigantic beast bent one knee, then the other. It lowered its magnificent antlers until they nearly touched the ground. It bowed. Velune stared in complete disbelief. The moonstag wasn't threatening Lumo. It looked respectful. Lumo waddled forward without fear. It gently touched its tiny nose against the giant stag's forehead. The enormous creature closed its eyes peacefully. Soft silver light rippled through the entire forest. Leaves began glowing. Flowers bloomed all around them. Birds gathered silently in nearby branches. Even the wind changed direction. Velune whispered. Who are you? Lumo looked back innocently. MRP. As if it had no idea anything unusual had happened. The moonstag slowly stood again. Before leaving, it looked directly into Velune's emerald eyes. There was unmistakable intelligence in its gaze. Almost recognition. Then it disappeared into the trees without making a single sound. Far away, high atop a stone observation tower, Captain Orion lowered his brass spyglass. His calm expression disappeared. Impossible. Beside him stood Professor Hazelwhisk. What is it? Orion remained silent. His silver ears twitched. I've protected Whispering Grove for 23 years. I've seen moonstags chase away veteran rangers. I've seen them attack entire hunting parties. He slowly lowered the spyglass. I've never, not once, seen one bow. Hazelwhisk frowned. To whom? Captain Orion looked toward the distant northern trail. Not the little creature. His voice became unusually quiet. It bowed to the black cat. The professor's eyes widened. Should we report this? Orion thought for a long moment, then slowly shook his head. Not yet. He looked toward the academy, toward the highest tower, where Headmaster Cedric's office overlooked the entire forest. If Cedric learns about this before we understand it. His expression darkened. I'm afraid that child will never know another peaceful day. Unaware that anyone had witnessed the encounter, Velune tucked the moon blossom safely into her satchel. Lumo climbed back onto her shoulder. It happily nuzzled against her cheek. Velune smiled. I still don't know what you are. She gently rubbed its tiny head. But I think we're going to figure it out together. Hidden beneath the forest floor, far below ancient roots and forgotten ruins, hundreds of silver runes awakened one after another. Then, a second colossal eye opened. The peaceful silence didn't last. A sharp cry suddenly echoed through Whispering Grove. Help! Another scream followed. Then another. Velune immediately stopped walking. Someone's in trouble. Lumo's ears stood upright. MRP. The cries came from deeper inside the forest. Velune didn't hesitate. Come on! She sprinted through the towering pastel trees, ducking beneath glowing branches and leaping over crystal-covered roots. The desperate voices grew louder. Finally, she burst into a clearing. 3 students were trapped against a rocky cliff. Towering over them stood a massive thornback bow. Its body was covered in bark-like armor. Long crystal tusks curved toward the sky. Glowing red eyes burned with fury. One frightened tabby trembled so badly he could barely stand. It wasn't supposed to wake up. I only wanted one flower. The boar scraped its hoof across the ground. The earth shook. Another charge. And the students wouldn't survive. Velune looked around desperately. There was nowhere to hide. The boar roared. It lowered its head, then charged. No! Without thinking, Velune threw herself between the monster and the students. The boar thundered closer. Its enormous tusks gleamed in the morning light. The ground trembled beneath every step. The frightened students stared at Velune in horror. What are you doing? You'll die. Velune spread her arms protectively. She knew she couldn't stop it. She wasn't stronger. She wasn't faster. She simply couldn't watch someone else get hurt. Lumo jumped from her shoulder. It landed softly on the grass. Then, it stepped forward. The tiny creature was so small that one of the boar's hooves could have crushed it without slowing down. MRP. Its little voice barely carried across the clearing. The thornback boar continued charging. 20 meters. 15. 10. 5. Then, everything stopped. The enormous beast froze so suddenly that doubt sprayed in every direction. Its red eyes blinked. Its breathing slowed. The rage vanished. Silence filled the clearing. Lumo took one more tiny step. The gigantic boar lowered its head. Slowly. Respectfully. Then, just like the moonstag, it knelt. Velune's eyes widened. The trapped students stayed in disbelief. One whispered, "No way." The thornback boar gently nudged Lumo with the tip of its nose, almost like greeting an old friend. Lumo happily rubbed its tiny face against the giant beast. MRP. The boar let out a deep, peaceful rumble before quietly turning around. Without another sound, it disappeared into the forest. For several long moments, nobody spoke. Finally, one of the rescued students found his voice. "You." He stared at Velune. "How did you do that?" Velune shook her head. "I don't know." She honestly didn't. Lumo climbed back into her arms as if nothing unusual had happened. High above the clearing, Captain Orion watched everything from a rocky overlook. This time, he wasn't alone. Beside him stood Headmaster Cedric Thornclaw. Cedric slowly lowered his enchanted viewing crystal. His calm expression never changed, but his golden eyes narrowed. A thornback boar. They attack anything that enters their territory. Captain Orion nodded. They do. And yet, Cedric's gaze remained fixed on Velune below. It bowed. Neither cat spoke for several seconds. Finally, Cedric smiled. It was polite, controlled, but there wasn't a trace of warmth in it. Interesting. Captain Orion looked sideways. I've never seen anything like this. Cedric folded his paws behind his back. Neither have I. His smile widened ever so slightly. Keep watching the girl. Then he quietly walked away. Captain Orion watched him leave. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. Deep inside Mooncrest Academy, far beneath the headmaster's office, hidden behind an ancient stone wall, Cedric descended a spiral staircase lit by eerie violet flames. No student knew these tunnels existed. No teacher had permission to enter them. At the bottom, a massive iron door slowly opened. Beyond it stood a circular chamber. Black candles burned with colorless fire. Ancient symbols covered every wall. Several hooded cats waited silently around a stone table. One bowed. Our headmaster. Cedric removed his academy cloak. Beneath it, his elegant robes were embroidered with a silver eclipse, the symbol of the eclipse circle. One of the hooded figures spoke. The awakening. Cedric nodded once. It has begun. Another asked, Are you certain? Cedric placed both paws on the ancient table. The surface shimmered. An image appeared. Velune, holding Lumo. The room fell silent. One elderly cat whispered, Impossible. The records stated they were extinct. Cedric's voice remained calm. Apparently, the records were incomplete. Another figure leaned forward. Shall we eliminate the girl now? Cedric considered the question, then slowly shook his head. No, not yet. Everyone looked confused. Cedric's eyes never left Lumo's tiny image. If that creature truly is what I believe, killing it now would teach us nothing. He smiled. We let it grow. We learn. And when the time is right. The candles flickered. We take it. Back in Whispering Grove, the practical examination was nearly over. Students gathered near the academy gates. Many proudly carried moon blossoms. Some compared scores. Others excitedly discussed their magical beasts. Then, the rescued students suddenly pushed through the crowd. Professor! Professor Hazelwist turned. What happened? The orange tabby pointed toward Velune. She saved us. Another nodded vigorously. A thornback boar attacked. Gasps spread through the students. They're far too dangerous for first years. How are you still alive? The tabby swallowed. It bowed. Silence. Someone laughed. Nice joke. I'm serious. It knelt in front of her. The crowd erupted into skeptical whispers. Seraphine folded her arms. Oh. Then perhaps next you'll tell us dragons make tea. Several students laughed. The rescued cats looked frustrated. We saw it. It happened. Professor Hazelwhisk looked toward Velune. Is that true? Velune hesitated. She looked down at Lumo. It didn't attack. That's all I know. Lumo tilted its head innocently. MRP. The professor stared at the tiny creature. Her instincts told her something impossible had just happened. But there wasn't enough evidence. Not yet. As the students returned to the academy, no one noticed the shadows moving between the trees. A pair of glowing amber eyes watched Velune disappear through the gates. Then another pair opened. Then another. Then dozens more. Hidden throughout Whispering Grove, ancient beasts had awakened. Moon wolves, crystal stags, stone bears, sky lynxes, creatures that rarely showed themselves to anyone. One by one, they silently lowered their heads toward Mooncrest Academy. Not out of fear, not out of obedience, but out of recognition. Far beneath the roots of the oldest tree in the forest, The colossal guardian slowly stood for the first time in 1,000 years. Ancient chains wrapped around its enormous body groaned under the strain. One cracked, then another. A deep voice echoed through the underground sanctuary. Our queen has returned. The ancient guardian slowly lifted its head toward the distant academy. And this time, we will not fail her again. By the next morning, the entire academy had heard the rumor. Some said Velune had bewitched the thornback boar. Others claimed she had used forbidden magic. A few insisted the rescued students had invented the story to avoid failing the examination. Only one thing was certain. Everyone was talking about the black cat. Velune wished they weren't. Lumo stretched lazily across her pillow while morning sunlight poured through the dormitory window. The little creature yawned. Its tiny wings fluttered. Then it rolled directly off the bed. MRP. Velune caught it before it hit the floor. You really are clumsy. Lumo blinked, then proudly puffed out its chest as if falling had been intentional. Velune couldn't help laughing. You'll never convince anyone that was on purpose. Lumo crossed its little paws. HMPH. Its dramatic expression was so serious that Velune laughed even harder. For a few wonderful moments, she forgot every cruel word from yesterday. Breakfast was another story. The academy dining hall buzzed with conversation. Students sat in large groups beneath floating lanterns shaped like glowing flowers. Velune quietly collected a tray. As she searched for an empty seat, conversation stopped. Several students looked away. Others quietly picked up their trays and moved to different tables. It happened so naturally that nobody even acknowledged it. Velune stood alone. Again. Before she could turn away, a cheerful voice called out, "There's room here." She looked up. A cinnamon-colored tabby waved enthusiastically. He wore oversized glasses that constantly slipped down his nose. Beside him sat a fluffy cream Maine Coon who smiled warmly. "You don't have to eat alone." Velune blinked. "Really?" "Of course." The tabby stood up. "I'm Bramble." He offered a paw. "I like collecting ancient maps." The Maine Coon giggled. "And I'm Hazel. I like baking." Velune hesitated only a second before shaking Bramble's paw. "I'm Velune." "We know." Hazel smiled. "You were very brave yesterday." Velune immediately shook her head. "I wasn't brave. I was terrified." Bramble laughed. "Being terrified and helping anyway. That's what bravery is." Velune didn't know how to answer. Nobody had ever called her brave before. Lumo happily climbed onto the table. MRP. Hazel gasped. "Oh my goodness. May I?" Velune nodded. Hazel gently scratched beneath Lumo's tiny chin. The little creature instantly rolled onto its back, tiny paws waving in the air. MRP. "So fluffy." Hazel laughed. "I don't care what everyone says. I think you're adorable." Lumo squeaked proudly, then immediately tried to climb into Hazel's lap. Bramble chuckled. "I think you've made a new friend." Across the dining hall, Seraphine watched the entire exchange. She quietly stirred her tea. "Interesting." One of her followers frowned. "What is?" "The black cat. What about her?" Seraphine's pale blue eyes narrowed slightly. "For someone everyone avoids. She's starting to make friends." She didn't like that. Not one bit. After breakfast, first-year Beast Bond students gathered in the grand training arena. The circular arena stretched nearly the size of a village square. Floating crystals illuminated every corner. Ancient murals decorated the stone walls. Each mural showed legendary beast keepers standing beside dragons, phoenixes, and creatures that had vanished centuries ago. Professor Hazelwisk stepped into the center. "Today's lesson is communication." Several students looked confused. "You don't command your companions. You listen to them." She smiled. "The strongest beast keepers don't force loyalty. They earn it." Velune listened carefully. Every word mattered. Professor Hazelwisk continued. "I'll call each student one at a time. You will demonstrate your bond." Students eagerly lined up. One after another, companions displayed impressive abilities. Moonwolves tracked hidden scents. Crystal falcons shattered floating targets. Stone rams broke enormous boulders. Thunder foxes summoned sparks that danced across the arena. Applause echoed constantly. Then, Seraphine. Her crystal griffin soared into the sky. With a graceful cry, it created hundreds of shimmering crystal feathers. Every feather struck a moving target. Perfect accuracy. The arena exploded with applause. Professor Hazelwisk nodded. "Excellent." Seraphine smiled modestly, though everyone knew she had expected nothing less. Finally, Velune. The arena grew quiet. Lumo waddled happily into the center. It looked around curiously, then sneezed. Tiny silver sparkles floated through the air. A few students laughed. Professor Hazelwisk remained patient. "Very well. Show us how you communicate." Velune knelt beside Lumo. "What should we do?" Lumo looked around. It noticed a colorful butterfly drifting above the arena. Its silver eyes sparkled. MRP. Instead of demonstrating magic, it chased the butterfly. The entire arena erupted with laughter. The butterfly fluttered higher. Lumo jumped, missed, rolled across the grass, got back up, continued chasing it with absolute determination. Bramble quietly covered his mouth to hide a smile. Hazel giggled. "It's kind of cute." Across the arena, Seraphine wasn't smiling. She was laughing, loudly. "Oh, Velune. Your terrifying legendary beast appears to have declared war on a butterfly." Even some professors struggled not to smile. Lumo finally caught the butterfly. Very gently, it looked at the tiny insect for a second, then happily let it go. The butterfly landed briefly on Lumo's nose before flying away. Lumo watched it disappear into the sky, completely satisfied. Professor Hazelwhisk remained silent for a moment. Then, she smiled. A perfect demonstration. The laughter stopped. Students exchanged confused glances. Seraphine frowned. What? The professor looked around the arena. How many of your companions obey because you trained them? Nearly every student raised a paw. She nodded. Now. She looked toward Lumo. How many of your companions would release something they had already caught? Simply because they understood it wasn't meant to be harmed. Silence. The students lowered their paws. Professor Hazelwhisk smiled gently at Velune. Trust. Kindness. Restraint. Those are strengths too. Velune looked surprised. Nobody had defended her. Not publicly. Not before today. Lumo climbed onto her shoulder. Its tiny chest puffed with pride. MRP. The lesson ended. Students slowly left the arena. As Velune packed her satchel, Captain Orion approached. The massive silver Maine-coon cast an enormous shadow across the grass. His Blue Ranger's cloak fluttered softly behind him. Velune. She immediately stood. Captain Orion. I watched your examination yesterday. Valune's ears drooped slightly. I'm sorry if I broke any rules. You didn't. He looked toward Lumo. What happened with the moon stag? Has happened only once before. Velune blinked. It has. Long ago. He hesitated, but the records were destroyed. Destroyed? By whom? Before Velune could ask, a young academy messenger sprinted into the arena. Captain, what is it? The headmaster requests your presence immediately. Orion frowned. I'll be there shortly. The messenger nodded before hurrying away. Captain Orion looked back at Velune. For a brief moment, it seemed he wanted to tell her something important. Instead, he simply smiled. Take good care of your little friend. Then he walked away, hidden behind one of the arena's towering marble pillars. Headmaster Cedric had witnessed the entire conversation. He couldn't hear every word, but he didn't need to. His golden eyes never left Lumo. For just an instant, the tiny creature looked back. Their eyes met. Cedric felt something he'd never experienced before. Not fear. Not exactly. Recognition. As if Lumo knew exactly who he was. The headmaster's confident smile disappeared. Very quietly, he whispered to himself. So, you remember. Then he turned and disappeared into the shadows before anyone noticed he had ever been there. Captain Orion couldn't stop thinking about Lumo. The little creature had done something that shouldn't have been possible. Twice. First, the moonstag. Then, the thornback bull. Neither beast had been frightened. Neither had been controlled. They had recognized something. Something ancient. Something Orion had only read about in fragments of forbidden books. As he crossed the academy courtyard, he made a decision. If the answers still existed, they wouldn't be in the headmaster's library. They would be somewhere nobody visited anymore. That afternoon, Professor Hazelwhisk announced the final lesson. For the rest of today, your assignment is simple. She smiled. Spend time with your companions. Learn what makes them happy. No training. No competition. Just build your bond. The students happily scattered across the academy grounds. Some played fetch with their wolves. Others practiced flying with their birds. Seraphine's crystal griffin proudly circled above the towers, drawing admiring gasps wherever it passed. Velune simply wandered through the academy gardens. Pastel roses lined every path. Butterflies drifted between glowing flowers. Lumo hopped from one stepping stone to another, completely fascinated by everything. It chased falling petals. It sniffed flowers. It waved enthusiastically at dragonflies. Then, it stopped. Its tiny ears twitched. It stared toward the oldest building on campus, a forgotten stone tower covered in ivy. Every window was boarded shut. Most students didn't even notice it anymore. Lumo pointed. MRP. Velune tilted her head. The old library. She remembered hearing stories about it. It had been closed decades ago after a fire destroyed much of its collection. No classes were ever held there. No students were allowed inside. Lumo climbed onto her shoulder and pointed again. More insistently. MRP. MRP. You want to go there? The little creature nodded so hard it nearly lost its balance. Velune laughed. Well, we're probably not supposed to. Lumo gave her the saddest eyes imaginable. Its ears drooped. Its tiny lip trembled dramatically. Velune sighed. That's not fair. Lumo immediately smiled. It knew it had won. The path leading to the forgotten tower was almost hidden beneath flowering vines. No footprints marked the old stone walkway. The air felt strangely quiet. Even the birds avoided this part of the academy. Velune gently pushed open the rusted iron gate. It creaked loudly. Maybe we should go back. Nothing happened. Lumo hopped down and confidently marched forward, as though it already knew where it was going. Inside, dust floated through thin beams of sunlight. Broken shelves leaned against cracked walls. Ancient books lay scattered across the floor. Nature had begun reclaiming the building. Flowers grew between broken stones. Tiny vines wrapped around old wooden tables. It was beautiful. In a lonely sort of way. Lumo wandered through the ruined library. Then suddenly, it stopped before a massive stone wall. There were no doors. No windows. Just smooth gray stone. The little creature placed one tiny paw against it. MRP. Nothing happened. Then, silver light spread beneath its paw. Ancient symbols slowly appeared across the wall. Velune stepped backward. What? The symbols glowed brighter. The entire wall rumbled. Dust fell from the ceiling. Slowly, a hidden doorway appeared. Valune's heart pounded. There was a room behind the wall. The stone door slid open by itself. Cool air drifted out. It smelled ancient, almost untouched by time. Lumo looked back proudly, as if saying, "See, I told you." The hidden chamber was unlike anything Velune had ever seen. Unlike the ruined library outside, everything here remained perfectly preserved. Books lined polished shelves. Silver lanterns still burned with soft moonlight. The walls were covered in paintings. Every painting showed magical beasts, but not ordinary ones. Dragons with galaxies flowing through their wings. Phoenixes made of moonlight. Great wolves larger than mountains. Creatures Velune had never imagined. At the center of the room stood a marble statue. It depicted a black cat. A beautiful long-haired black cat. She wore flowing robes embroidered with stars. Dozens of legendary beasts surrounded her. Not as servants, as companions. Every one of them looked at her with complete trust. Velune slowly approached. She looks like me. Not exactly, but enough to make her pause. Lumo climbed onto the statue's paw, then happily rubbed its cheek against the stone. MRP. The statue suddenly began glowing. Velune gasped. The marble eyes slowly filled with silver light. A gentle female voice echoed through the chamber. "If you can hear my voice, then the Moonkeeper has returned." Velune froze. The same title. Moonkeeper. Again. The voice continued. "If fate has led you here, then darkness has awakened once more." Paintings around the room slowly shimmered. Scenes began moving like living memories. Velune watched in amazement. She saw an ancient kingdom. Beautiful. Peaceful. Cats and magical beasts living together. Then, the sky turned black. Creatures made of living shadow descended from the heavens. Cities burned. Forests withered. Legendary beasts fought desperately. Many fell. The black cat from the statue stood at the center of the battlefield. Beside her, a tiny fluffy creature. It looked almost identical to Lumo. Only, older. Its wings were enormous. Its fur shimmered like the night sky. With one cry, every legendary beast united. Dragons, phoenixes, griffins, moonlions, ancient wolves. They charged together against the darkness. The vision faded. Silence returned. Velune could barely breathe. "Lumo." The little creature looked up innocently. "MRP." Before she could speak again, a loud voice echoed from outside the hidden chamber. "Who's in there?" Valune's eyes widened. Professor Alder, one of the academy instructors. His footsteps were getting closer. Lumo looked toward the doorway, then back at Velune. The little creature quickly tapped the floor 3 times with its paw. The silver doorway immediately began closing. The hidden chamber vanished just as Professor Alder entered the ruined library. He frowned. "Velune." She tried to steady her breathing. "Oh. Professor. What are you doing in the abandoned library?" Velune hesitated. Lumo suddenly sneezed. MRPCHO. Tiny silver sparkles exploded into the air. Professor Alder sighed. "I suppose curiosity got the better of you." Velune nodded sheepishly. "I'm sorry." He looked around the dusty room, then shrugged. "Just don't come here again. This building isn't considered safe." "Yes, Professor." As they walked back toward the academy, neither of them noticed. Behind the now hidden stone wall, one final message slowly appeared beneath the statue. Words no living cat had read for over 1,000 years. "Beware the one who wears the eclipse. He has already entered your home." Far above the academy, Headmaster Cedric stood alone in his tower. He slowly turned toward the abandoned library. A cold smile spread across his face. "So, you found the sanctuary." He quietly opened one paw. Inside rested a cracked silver pendant, the exact same symbol carved around the hidden chamber. "I was wondering how long it would take." Then his smile faded. "Now the game truly begins." That night, Mooncrest Academy slept peacefully beneath a blanket of silver moonlight. Pastel lanterns swayed gently in the cool breeze. Students dreamed soundly after another exhausting day of training. But someone wasn't asleep. Velune sat beside her dormitory window, staring at the moon. The vision inside the hidden sanctuary replayed over and over in her mind. The ancient black cat, the legendary beasts, the tiny creature that looked just like Lumo, and those final words, "Beware the one who wears the eclipse." She looked across the room. Lumo slept peacefully on her pillow. Its tiny chest rose and fell with every soft breath. It looked so innocent, so harmless. How could such a little creature be connected to something so enormous? A quiet knock interrupted her thoughts. Tap, tap, tap. Velune frowned. Nobody visited her room, especially not this late. She carefully opened the door. Standing outside was Captain Orion. He looked unusually serious. His blue ranger's cloak was damp from the evening mist. "Captain." He glanced down both ends of the hallway before speaking. "We don't have much time." Velune immediately stepped aside. "Please, come in." Captain Orion closed the door behind him. His sharp blue eyes immediately found Lumo sleeping peacefully. For a moment, the hardened ranger smiled. "So that's what complete trust looks like." Velune followed his gaze. "He falls asleep almost anywhere." Orion chuckled softly. "I envy that." The smile disappeared almost as quickly as it came. "I came because I found something." He reached beneath his cloak. Carefully, he unfolded an ancient parchment. Its edges were brittle with age. The ink had faded. This map was hidden beneath the ranger archives. Velune leaned closer. What is it? It shows Mooncrest Academy. Before it became an academy. Her eyes widened. The map looked nothing like the campus she knew. Instead of classrooms, the entire mountain had once been covered by an enormous temple complex. Dozens of shrines surrounded one central sanctuary. In the center, one symbol had been carefully drawn. A silver crescent moon embracing a tiny star. Orion pointed toward the exact location of the abandoned library. That's where you are today. Valune's ears perked. You know. He nodded. I saw Professor Alder escort you out. I didn't tell anyone. Velune hesitated. I found. She wasn't sure how much she should reveal. A hidden room. Captain Orion didn't look surprised. I suspected you might. You did. He slowly nodded. My grandmother told me stories when I was little. Stories the academy forbade. He carefully rolled the map closed. She said Mooncrest wasn't originally built to train beastkeepers. It was built to protect someone. Velune whispered. The Moonkeeper. Captain Orion froze. You've heard that name. She slowly nodded. The ranger's expression grew even more serious. Then the legends are true. Before Velune could ask another question, Lumo suddenly sat upright. Its ears flattened. Its playful expression disappeared. For the first time, it looked afraid. MRP. No. It stared toward the window, then let out a louder cry. MRP. Captain Orion spun around instantly. What is it? Lumo pointed outside, toward the academy gardens. Something moved. Not a student. Not a professor. A shadow. It slipped silently between the glowing trees, almost invisible beneath the moonlight. Orion's ears twitched. His paw instinctively reached for the sword hanging at his side. Stay here. Velune immediately stood. I'm coming. No. I can help. Orion looked into her determined emerald eyes. For a brief moment, he saw something that reminded him of the paintings from his grandmother's stories. Not power. Courage. He sighed. Stay behind me. The academy gardens looked completely different at night. Silver flowers glowed softly beneath ancient trees. Moonlight reflected across quiet ponds. Everything seemed peaceful. Too peaceful. Lumo remained perched on Valune's shoulder. Its tiny eyes searched every shadow. Then, it pointed. There. A dark figure stood beside one of the oldest statues in the garden. Completely still. Its face was hidden beneath a hood. Captain Orion called out firmly. State your name. No answer. The figure slowly turned. Then, it began walking away. Not running. Walking. Almost inviting them to follow. Orion frowned. It's trying to lure us. Velune whispered. Should we stop? The ranger studied the stranger carefully. Then nodded once. We'll follow. But carefully. The hooded figure led them through twisting garden paths. Past abandoned classrooms. Beyond the greenhouse. Finally, it stopped at the academy cemetery. Velune had never been there before. Ancient stone markers stretched across a quiet hill. Most were so weathered their names had disappeared. The mysterious figure stood before one particular grave. Then, it simply vanished. Gone. Like mist. Captain Orion rushed forward. Nothing. No footprints. No scent. No magic residue. It disappeared. Velune looked toward the gravestone. Unlike the others, its writing remained perfectly clear. She knelt, brushed away a thin layer of moss, then read the inscription aloud. Here rests Lady Selene Ashvale. Valune's heart skipped. Ashvale. Her surname. That's impossible. Captain Orion looked stunned. You knew her? No. I've never heard this name. She stayed at the stone. My family has never mentioned anyone called Selene. Lumo quietly climbed onto the gravestone. The tiny creature gently touched it with one paw. Immediately, silver light spread across the ancient stone. Hidden words slowly appeared beneath the original inscription. Words invisible for centuries. Velune read them in a trembling voice. The first Moonkeeper. Silence. Neither Velune nor Orion spoke. A cold breeze swept across the cemetery. Hundreds of silver flowers surrounding the grave slowly opened all at once, almost as if welcoming someone home. Then, a faint voice drifted through the night. Soft, gentle, almost impossible to hear. You finally come back. Velune spun around. Who said that? Nobody. The cemetery stood empty. Captain Orion looked equally disturbed. You heard it too. She nodded slowly. Lumo wasn't frightened anymore. Instead, it curled peacefully on top of the gravestone, as though it had found somewhere familiar. Suddenly, every lantern across Mooncrest Academy went dark. One after another, the entire campus was swallowed by darkness. Students screamed from distant dormitories. Alarm bells began ringing. Captain Orion immediately drew his sword. Something's wrong. Above them, the full moon disappeared. Not behind clouds. Behind. A massive black eclipse. Deep beneath the academy. Inside the hidden chamber beneath the headmaster's office. Lord Malric slowly opened his crimson eyes. A hooded messenger knelt before him. The seal has reacted. Malric smiled. So, the Moonkeeper has remembered her name. He rose from his stone throne. Then there is no reason to wait any longer. He looked toward the ceiling. Toward Velune. Prepare the shadow hunters. This time, bring me the little one alive. The academy bells rang without stopping. Dong, dong, dong. The sound echoed across every tower, every courtyard, and every dormitory. Students rushed outside in confusion. Teachers shouted orders. Stay together. Return to the main hall. Nobody enters the forest. Velune looked toward the sky. The eclipse covered nearly half the moon now. Everything beneath it had taken on a strange silver-gray glow. Even the colorful pastel gardens seemed drained of their warmth. Captain Orion immediately stepped in front of her. Listen carefully. His normally calm voice had become sharp. If anything happens, you run. Velune frowned. What about you? I'll buy you time. She shook her head. I'm not leaving you. Before Orion could answer, Lumo suddenly stood on Valune's shoulder. Its tiny ears flattened. Its silver eyes locked onto the darkness beyond the cemetery. Then it growled. Not loudly. Not ferociously. Just one tiny. Emma. The hairs along Orion's neck stood up. If Lumo's warning us, they're already here. The wind stopped. Every flower in the cemetery lowered toward the ground. Even the glowing insects disappeared. Silence. Then, a single black feather drifted from the sky. It landed softly at Valune's feet. Captain Orion's expression changed instantly. No. Another feather floated down. Then another. Soon, dozens filled the air. Except, they weren't feathers. They were pieces of living shadow. The darkness gathered between the ancient gravestones. It twisted. It stretched, slowly taking shape. One figure. Then another. Then 5. Each wore long charcoal cloaks. Their faces were hidden behind smooth silver masks. No eyes. No mouths. Only a single black crescent painted across each mask. Captain Orion stepped forward. The shadow hunters. Velune whispered. You know them. His grip tightened around his sword. I hoped you never would. The tallest hunter tilted his head. His voice sounded strangely hollow. Captain Orion. You've aged. Orion didn't answer. The hunter's attention shifted to Velune. Then, to Lumo. So, this is the last, eh? Lumo hid behind Valune's neck. The hunter smiled beneath his mask. Oh, at least. His voice sounded like he was smiling. Our master requests your presence. Velune stood her ground. I'm not going anywhere. The hunter sighed. They always refuse. He raised one paw. Take the creature. Immediately, the other hunters rushed forward. Captain Orion moved first. His silver blade flashed beneath the moonlight. Clang. One hunter barely blocked the strike with a black spear. Another appeared behind Orion. He spun. His tail swept beneath the attacker's feet. The hunter crashed into a gravestone. Stone shattered. Orion shouted. Run! Velune grabbed Lumo and sprinted. She raced between ancient monuments as shadows chased her from every direction. She wasn't a warrior. She had no combat magic. Only instinct. Branches snapped behind her. Footsteps closed in. A black chain suddenly shot through the darkness. It wrapped around her ankle. She fell hard onto the grass. Lumo tumbled from her arms. MRP. No. The tiny creature scrambled toward her. Another hunter appeared. He reached for Lumo. Velune lunged. She grabbed the little creature just before cold black claws could touch it. The hunter's mask tilted. So protective. He raised his hand. Dark energy gathered around his fingertips. Velune squeezed Lumo tightly against her chest. She knew. She couldn't dodge. Suddenly, a deafening roar shook the cemetery. Not from the hunters. From the forest. Every tree trembled. Birds exploded into the sky. The hunters froze. Captain Orion looked toward Silverwood Forest. No. The roar came again. Closer this time. The ground began shaking. Heavy footsteps echoed between the trees. 1, 2, 3. Then, out of the darkness emerged the enormous moonstag Velune had met during the trial. Only, it wasn't alone. Beside it walked the thornback bull. Behind them came 2 massive crystal bears. Then 3 sky lynxes. Moon wolves emerged from every direction. Silver foxes. Stone rams. Dozens. Then hundreds. Every magical beast of Whispering Grove surrounded the cemetery. Not one looked at Velune. Not one looked at Orion. Every pair of glowing eyes fixed on the shadow hunters. The tallest hunter whispered, Retreat. None of the others moved. Even they seemed stunned. This wasn't in the reports. The moonstag stepped forward. It lowered its magnificent antlers. Not to attack. To warn. The crystal bears growled. The wolves bared their teeth. One by one, more beasts emerged from the forest. Until the cemetery was completely surrounded. Captain Orion slowly lowered his sword. He had spent 23 years protecting these woods. He had never, not once, seen the beasts unite. The tallest hunter made one last attempt. Little guardian. His voice softened. You belong with us. Lumo peeked over Valune's shoulder. Instead of hiding, the tiny creature looked directly into the hunter's empty silver mask. Then, very gently, it shook its little head. MRP. Nothing more. Just one tiny refusal. The reaction was immediate. Every beast roared. The sound rolled across the academy like thunder. The shadow hunters stepped backward. For the first time, they looked afraid. The tallest hunter slowly lowered his weapon. We leave. The others stayed at him. But, we leave. Without another word, their bodies dissolved into black feathers. Within seconds, they were gone. Silence returned. The magical beast remained. The moonstag approached Velune. She instinctively held Lumo closer. The giant creature stopped only a few steps away. Then, it bowed. Behind it, the crystal bears bowed. The wolves bowed. The foxes, the lynxes, even the enormous thornback boar lowered itself respectfully. Hundreds of magical beasts, all bowing at once. The moonlight reflected across their lowered heads like silver waves. Valune's eyes filled with tears. I don't understand. The moon stag lifted its head. For one brief moment, its voice echoed directly inside her mind. Not through words, through feeling. Warm, ancient, loyal. We remember. The message vanished as quickly as it had come. The beasts slowly turned. One by one, they disappeared back into Whispering Grove. Within minutes, it was as though they had never been there. Captain Orion stood perfectly still. His sword slipped from his paw and landed softly in the grass. Velune had never seen the veteran ranger speechless. Finally, he whispered, "They weren't protecting Lumo." Velune looked at him. What? He slowly met her emerald eyes. They were protecting you. At that exact moment, far beneath Mooncrest Academy, Lord Malrek watched everything through a pool of black water. The reflection rippled with the image of the bowing beasts. His crimson eyes narrowed. So the ancient packs are still intact. A hooded servant spoke nervously. "My lord, should we attack the academy?" Malrek smiled. "No, not yet." He reached toward another ancient relic resting beside his throne. An old silver crown, cracked down the middle. The girl doesn't remember who she is. And that, he closed his paw around the crown, is our greatest advantage. The black water rippled once more. This time, it revealed another face. A beautiful black cat. Nearly identical to Velune. Only older. Only stronger. The image faded before anyone else could see it. Malrek whispered to the darkness, "Wake her sister." The chamber fell silent. Then, from somewhere deep below the earth, a pair of brilliant golden eyes slowly opened. The academy tried to pretend nothing had happened. By sunrise, the shattered gravestones had been repaired. Broken pathways were magically restored. The bells had stopped ringing. Teachers assured the students that the disturbance had merely been an unusual magical surge. Most believed them. Velune didn't. Captain Orion didn't. And somewhere beneath Mooncrest Academy, Lord Malrek certainly didn't. 3 days passed. For the first time since arriving at Mooncrest, life almost felt normal. Almost. Velune continued attending classes. Lumo continued making friends with absolutely everything. The little creature had somehow befriended the academy's gardeners, every bird living in the courtyard, and even the grumpy old tortoise that wandered near the greenhouse. Nobody understood how. The tortoise hadn't allowed anyone to touch it in nearly 40 years. Yet every morning, it patiently waited outside Valune's dormitory until Lumo climbed onto its shell. Then the old tortoise proudly carried its tiny passenger around the gardens. Even students who disliked Velune couldn't help smiling at the sight. MRP. Lumo waved proudly from its moving throne. Not everyone was amused. Seraphine watched from beneath a flowering cherry tree. Her crystal griffin stood silently behind her. One of her friends frowned. People are starting to like them. They are only fascinated because it's strange. Maybe. Seraphine folded her arms. But fascination becomes admiration. She narrowed her pale blue eyes. And admiration becomes loyalty. She looked toward Velune. "I won't allow that." That afternoon, Headmaster Cedric addressed the entire academy. Students gathered beneath colorful banners in the grand courtyard. Floating lanterns painted the sky with gentle shades of pink, blue, lavender, and gold. Cedric smiled warmly. "As many of you know, tomorrow begins our annual Beastkeepers Festival." Cheers erupted immediately. It was every student's favorite tradition. 3 days of friendly competitions, games, music, food, and demonstrations where magical companions could show off their unique talents. Even Velune had heard stories about it before coming to Mooncrest. Professor Hazelwisk stepped forward. "This isn't about strength. It's about trust. Your companions are welcome to participate however they wish. Some beasts would race. Others would solve puzzles. Some would paint. Others would sing. Every magical creature had different gifts." Lumo looked excited. "MRP." Velune laughed. "You want to compete?" Lumo nodded enthusiastically. "I don't even know what you're good at." The little creature proudly puffed out its chest. Apparently, neither did it. The following morning, the academy looked transformed. Colorful ribbons fluttered between towers. Flower garlands decorated every archway. Long wooden tables overflowed with pastries, fruit tarts, honey cakes, berry juice, and sweet cream rolls. Students laughed together. Parents visited from every kingdom. Even magical beasts seemed unusually playful. For one day, there were no rankings, no examinations, only celebration. Velune had never seen Mooncrest so alive. "It's beautiful." Lumo bounced happily between flower beds. Every few steps it stopped to smell another blossom, or wave at another beast, or investigate another butterfly. It seemed impossible for the tiny creature to stay focused for more than 5 seconds. The first event was the obstacle course. Large wolves sprinted effortlessly across floating platforms. Falcons flew through glowing crystal rings. Mountain goats bounded across narrow stone pillars. Students cheered loudly. Lumo watched with wide silver eyes. "MRP. You want to try?" The little creature nodded. Moments later, the race began. A whistle echoed across the arena. The competitors dashed forward. Lumo ran 3 steps, stopped to admire a glowing flower. MRP. The other contestants disappeared into the distance. The audience laughed warmly. Velune covered her face. "Oh no." Lumo carefully sniffed the flower, smiled, then remembered the race. It sprinted another few meters, only to stop again when it noticed a ladybug. Captain Orion couldn't help chuckling. "I don't think winning is a priority." Hazelwisk laughed. "I don't think Lumo knows there's a race." By the time the tiny creature crossed the finish line, every other competitor had already finished. Lumo looked around proudly. MRP. As if completely convinced it had won. The audience burst into affectionate laughter. For once, it wasn't cruel. Even Velune laughed. "You may not be fast. She scooped Lumo into her arms. But you certainly make everyone smile. The second event was much quieter. Each magical beast received a blank canvas. The challenge was simple. Create something using magic. Crystal griffins sculpted beautiful ice flowers. Moon wolves painted glowing landscapes with enchanted light. Foxes used colorful flames to create dazzling patterns. Then, Lumo's turn came. The tiny creature stared at the empty canvas, tilted its head, looked at Velune. MRP. I don't know either. Lumo scratched behind one A thoughtfully. Then, it walked across the canvas. Tiny silver paw prints appeared behind it. Nothing more. Just tiny footprints. Students blinked. That's it. Lumo smiled proudly, then curled into a fluffy ball and fell asleep on top of the painting. The judges approached. One elderly professor leaned closer. He frowned. Interesting. What is it? Another professor looked carefully. The silver paw prints were changing. Very slowly, like growing vines. Within seconds, the tiny prints connected together. A breathtaking image blossomed across the canvas. It wasn't paint. It was living silver light. The picture showed a peaceful valley where dragons, wolves, birds, deer, foxes, and cats all rested together beneath an enormous moon. No creature hunted another. No fear. No chains. Only harmony. The crowd fell silent. It wasn't simply beautiful. It felt real. As though everyone looking at it had suddenly remembered a place they'd never actually seen. Professor Hazelwisk whispered, I've seen this before. Captain Orion looked at her. Where? She slowly shook her head. I don't know. But it feels like home. The audience erupted into applause. Even Seraphine couldn't hide her surprise. Later that afternoon, the final event began. The friendship parade. Every student would walk through the academy gardens with their magical companion. There were no judges, no winners, only a celebration of the bond between keeper and beast. Velune smiled. This one should be easy. Lumo climbed happily onto her shoulder. Together they joined the procession. Music filled the air. Children clapped excitedly. Parents waved. Pastel flower petals drifted from enchanted trees overhead. Then, something unexpected happened. As Velune walked past the academy stables, every beast inside became completely silent. Moon horses stopped eating. Sky elk lowered their heads. Even the proud royal griffins folded their wings respectfully. The stable master blinked. What in the world? Velune hadn't noticed. She was busy laughing as Lumo tried catching floating petals. But everyone else saw it. As she passed each enclosure, every magical beast bowed. Not dramatically. Quietly. Naturally. As though greeting someone they had missed for a very long time. Whispers spread through the festival. Did you see that? The griffins bowed. Impossible. They only bow to the royal family. No. An elderly beastkeeper slowly removed his hat. His eyes filled with tears. I've only read about this. Captain Orion followed Velune from a distance. His expression became increasingly troubled. This was no longer coincidence. It was happening too often. Too publicly. And if he had noticed, then so had someone else. High above the festival, from the tallest tower of Mooncrest Academy, Headmaster Cedric watched every single bow. His smile never changed. But his fingers tightened around the balcony railing until cracks spread through the stone. So, he whispered coldly, the ancient oath is awakening. Behind him, a shadow emerged from the darkness. One of Lord Malrek's masked messengers knelt. My lord requests permission. Cedric didn't turn around. For what? To begin phase 2. Cedric looked down at the laughing students below. At Velune. At Lumo. Then toward Captain Orion. The ranger is becoming a problem. The messenger nodded. What are your orders? Cedric's golden eyes hardened. Tomorrow. Captain Orion dies. Captain Orion had survived battles against rogue wyverns. He had crossed the frost peaks during the Great Blizzard. He had faced monsters that most rangers only heard about in legends. But the feeling that settled over him that evening was unlike anything he had ever known. Someone was hunting him. The festival continued long after sunset. Music drifted through Mooncrest Academy. Students danced beneath strings of glowing lanterns. Magicians painted colorful lights across the night sky. Lumo chased every floating light it could find. MRP. The tiny creature leaped after another glowing orb. Missed. Rolled across the grass. Immediately stood up and pretended nothing had happened. Hazel laughed so hard she nearly dropped her berry juice. I don't think Lumo knows what embarrassment is. Velune smiled. I hope he never learns. Lumo proudly puffed out its tiny chest, then accidentally backed into a bucket of flowers. Pink blossoms landed all over its fluffy head. The audience burst into warm laughter. Lumo blinked, looked at the flowers, then proudly strutted around wearing them like a crown. Even Captain Orion laughed. Across the courtyard, Headmaster Cedric watched quietly from beneath a marble arch. He wasn't watching the festival. He was watching Orion. His eyes followed every step the ranger took. Every conversation. Every smile. Every glance toward Velune. Behind Cedric, a hooded figure appeared without making a sound. The hunters are ready. Cedric nodded almost imperceptibly. No mistakes. The figure disappeared. Hours later, the celebration finally came to an end. Students returned to their dormitories carrying prizes, pastries, and souvenirs. Velune yawned. What a day. Lumo was already asleep on top of her head. The tiny creature snored so softly it sounded like the rustling of leaves. Bramble stretched. I'm exhausted. Hazel smiled. See you both tomorrow. Good night. As Velune walked toward the dormitory, Captain Orion called after her. Velune. She turned. The veteran ranger smiled kindly. I have something I'd like to show you tomorrow morning. What is it? I think. He hesitated. I finally know where to begin looking for answers. Velune's eyes brightened. Really? He nodded. Meet me at sunrise. At the eastern gate. She smiled. I'll be there. Lumo sleepily lifted one paw. MRP. Orion chuckled. I'll see both of you then. None of them noticed. Someone watching from the roof above. Near midnight, Captain Orion walked alone through Mooncrest's eastern gardens. The academy was silent again. Only moonlight illuminated the stone paths. He had almost reached his quarters. When he stopped, someone stood ahead. A tall cat wearing a smooth silver mask. Then another appeared behind him. Then another. 5. Shadow hunters. Orion sighed quietly. I was wondering when you'd come. None of them answered. The tallest hunter slowly unsheathed 2 black blades. Captain Orion drew his own sword. Silver steel reflected the moonlight. So. He planted his feet. It's finally my turn. The first hunter attacked. Fast. Too fast for an ordinary fighter. But Orion wasn't ordinary. Their blades collided. Clang. Sparks exploded into the night. Another hunter lunged from behind. Orion spun low. His tail swept beneath the attacker's legs. The hunter crashed into a stone bench. Before he could recover, Orion's sword rested against his throat. You've gotten slower. The hunter laughed. Have we? A black chain shot from the darkness. It wrapped around Orion's sword. A second chain caught his arm. A third wrapped around his leg. The ranger cut through one. Then another. But more kept coming. They weren't trying to kill him. They were tiring him. Testing him. Far away, Velune stirred in her sleep. Lumos suddenly stood straight up. Its silver eyes flew open. The little creature jumped from the bed. MRP. Velune blinked awake. Lumo. The tiny creature ran to the window. Its fur began glowing. More brightly than ever before. Lumo. It looked directly toward the eastern gardens. Then back at Velune. MRP. Its frightened cry sent a chill through her. Something was wrong. Very wrong. She didn't stop to change clothes. She grabbed her cloak, scooped Lumo into her arms, and ran. Back in the gardens. Captain Orion was breathing heavily. One hunter lay unconscious. Another struggled to stand. But 3 remained. The tallest stepped forward. Our master regrets this. Orion laughed despite the blood running from a cut above his eye. No. He doesn't. The hunter tilted his head. No. He doesn't. He suddenly produced a short black dagger unlike the others. Its blade wasn't metal. It was made entirely of solid shadow. Orion's expression changed. A void blade. Even he knew what that meant. One wound could destroy a beast bond forever. The hunter lunged. Orion blocked. The impact knocked him backward. The dagger sliced across his shoulder. A burning darkness spread through his arm. His sword slipped from his grasp. The hunters closed in. Then, a tiny voice echoed through the gardens. MRP. Every hunter froze. Lumo. Velune burst through the trees seconds later. Captain. Orion looked up. No. I told you to run. Velune ignored him. She rushed toward the fallen ranger. The tallest hunter smiled beneath his mask. Perfect. Now we can finish both tasks. He reached toward Lumo. Instead of hiding, the tiny creature stepped in front of Velune. Its little body trembled, but it didn't move aside. MRP. The hunter laughed. What exactly do you think you're going to? He never finished. Lumo's silver eyes suddenly shone like twin stars. The air itself became still. Every lantern across the academy extinguished. Clouds raced across the moon. Then, a single silver bell rang. Not from the academy, from somewhere deep inside Silverwood Forest. One bell, then another, then dozens. The ground began shaking. Captain Orion whispered, "Oh, no." From beyond the academy walls, a chorus answered. The howl of ancient wolves, the cry of unseen griffins, the roar of colossal beasts. None of them had been seen for centuries. One by one, lights appeared deep within the forest. Hundreds, then thousands. Not lanterns. Eyes. Silver, golden, blue, emerald. Every ancient guardian in Silverwood had awakened. The shadow hunters slowly stepped backward. One whispered, "We've called them." The tallest shook his head. No. He stared at the tiny creature standing protectively before Velune. He called them. Far beneath the earth, the colossal guardian wrapped in ancient chains slowly stood. The final chain around one enormous foreleg snapped, with a thunderous crack that echoed through every cavern beneath Etheria. The guardian raised its head toward the surface. Its ancient voice rolled like distant thunder. The first bell has rung. The guardians shall gather. The first bell echoed across Etheria. Its haunting chime rolled over mountains, across rivers, through forgotten valleys where no cat had walked for centuries. Every legendary beast heard it. Every ancient guardian awakened. Even those sleeping beneath oceans and hidden beneath floating islands slowly opened their eyes. Something they had waited 1,000 years for had finally begun. Back at Mooncrest Academy, the shadow hunters no longer looked confident. They looked terrified. The tallest hunter slowly lowered his void blade. "We're leaving." Another hunter stared at him in disbelief. "But the target." "We leave." His voice was no longer calm. It wasn't a request. Before another word could be spoken, a deafening howl erupted from Silverwood Forest. The trees bent violently as an enormous gust of wind swept across the academy grounds. The hunters vanished into swirling black feathers. Within seconds, the gardens were empty. Only Captain Orion remained kneeling on the stone path. His breathing was shallow. The black wound on his shoulder continued spreading. Velune rushed to his side. "Captain." She dropped beside him. "Please stay with me." Orion forced a weak smile. "I've had worse." She looked at the dark veins crawling across his arm. "No, you haven't." Lumo carefully climbed onto Orion's lap. The little creature stared at the wound. Its silver eyes became unusually sad. MRP. Very gently, Lumo placed one tiny paw against the spreading darkness. Nothing happened. For a moment. Then, silver light flowed from Lumo's paw like moonlight pouring over calm water. The darkness stopped spreading. Captain Orion gasped. The pain disappeared almost instantly. The black veins slowly faded until only a faint scar remained. Velune stared. You healed him. Captain Orion looked equally shocked. No. He whispered. That wound was made by a void blade. There isn't a healer alive who can undo that. He slowly looked toward Lumo. But apparently, you're not an ordinary healer. Lumo blinked innocently, then sneezed. Pichu. Tiny silver sparkles landed on Orion's nose. The ranger laughed for the first time in weeks. The academy physicians arrived moments later. Professor Hazelwisk hurried across the gardens. What happened? Captain Orion stood before anyone could answer. I was attacked. She immediately noticed the broken stone benches, the scorched earth, the deep claw marks across the pathways. This wasn't a training accident. No, it wasn't. Students began gathering nearby. Whispers spread quickly. Captain Orion fought someone. Who would attack a ranger? Was it bandits? Cedric Thornclaw arrived last. Perfectly calm, perfectly composed. His golden eyes scanned the damage before settling on Orion. Captain, I'm relieved you're unharmed. Orion held the headmaster's gaze. So am I. For one brief moment, neither cat blinked. Velune noticed the tension immediately. Something passed silently between them. A conversation without words. Then Cedric smiled warmly. As headmaster, I'll launch an investigation immediately. Thank you. His voice remained polite, but Orion trusted that smile even less than before. By dawn, the entire academy buzzed with rumors. Some claimed monsters had entered the campus. Others believed ancient spirits had attacked. Nobody guessed the truth. Captain Orion quietly requested a private meeting with Velune. They met beneath the enormous moon willow overlooking the eastern lake. Morning mist drifted gently across the water. Lumo chased dragonflies while the two cats spoke. I owe you my life. Velune immediately shook her head. Lumo saved you. Orion smiled. I think both of you did. He reached inside his cloak. Carefully, he removed a small wooden box. The wood had darkened with age. Silver vines were carved into every side. My grandmother left this to me. He placed it gently into Velune's paws. I was told never to open it. Unless the moonkeeper returned. Velune looked up. You knew all this time. I knew the stories. I never believed them. He sighed softly. Until I met you. Velune slowly opened the box. Inside rested an old silver pendant. A crescent moon wrapped around a tiny star. Exactly the same symbol she had seen inside the hidden sanctuary. Beneath it lay a folded letter. The parchment had yellowed with age. Written across the front, in elegant silver ink, were 6 simple words. For the daughter of moonlight. Velune's paws trembled. She carefully unfolded the letter. The handwriting was graceful, beautiful, almost as though every word had been written with love. If you are reading this, then our hope survived. You may not know your true name. You may not remember your promise. Do not blame yourself. Memory was stolen to protect you. The beasts have never forgotten. Neither have we. The letter ended there. No signature. No explanation. Only one silver fingerprint pressed into the bottom of the page. Velune looked at Captain Orion. What does it mean? He slowly shook his head. I was hoping you could tell me. Elsewhere, deep beneath Mooncrest Academy, Lord Malrek stood before a giant crystal suspended over a pool of black water. Inside the crystal floated hundreds of tiny lights. Each represented one ancient guardian. One by one, the lights were awakening. A masked servant approached nervously. My lord. The first bell has united the nearby guardians. Malrek watched silently. How many? 112. Another servant rushed into the chamber. My lord. The northern shrines have also awakened. Malrek's crimson eyes narrowed. So quickly. He turned toward the cracked silver crown resting upon its pedestal. Then we begin before the second bell rings. The servants lowered their heads. My lord. What of the headmaster? Malrek smiled. Cedric has played his role perfectly. He has kept the moonkeeper exactly where we wanted her. He gently lifted the ancient crown. This academy was never built to protect her. His smile became colder. It was built to imprison her. Above them, unaware that every lesson, every classroom, every stone of Mooncrest had been part of a 1,000-year-old plan. Velune folded the mysterious letter and looked toward the sparkling lake. Lumo suddenly stopped chasing dragonflies. The little creature stared at the water. Its ears stood straight up. Ripples spread across the lake. Though there was no wind, something enormous moved beneath the surface. Lumo whispered only one frightened word. Emao. Then, a colossal silver eye slowly opened beneath the crystal-clear water. It blinked once and looked directly at Velune. Velune couldn't move. The enormous silver eye beneath the lake remained perfectly still. It wasn't threatening her. It wasn't blinking. It was simply watching. Lumo slowly climbed down from her shoulder. The tiny creature stood at the water's edge. Its fluffy tail twitched once. Emma Api. The giant eye blinked. A deep vibration rolled through the lake, sending gentle ripples across the crystal-clear water. Captain Orion instinctively reached for his sword, then stopped. No. He whispered. It's not hostile. Velune looked at him. How can you tell? Because. He swallowed. If it wanted us dead, there wouldn't be a lake anymore. The water slowly began glowing. Not with magic Velune recognized. With something older. Silver currents spiraled beneath the surface like ribbons of moonlight. Then, the enormous shape beneath the lake began rising. The water didn't splash. It parted, as though making way for royalty. Students gathering around the shoreline gasped. Teachers abandoned their lessons. Within minutes, half the academy stood silently around the lake. Nobody spoke. Nobody dared. The entire lake shimmered like liquid glass. Then, a colossal creature emerged. It resembled a lion, and yet it didn't. Its body was larger than the Academy's great hall. Its flowing manner looked like drifting moonlight. Its fur shimmered with soft silver constellations. 6 elegant tails floated behind it, each tipped with glowing stars. Massive antlers curved toward the heavens, woven with flowering vines that bloomed wherever droplets of water touched the ground. Every step it took caused flowers to bloom across the shoreline. Children instinctively stepped backward. Several magical beasts immediately lowered themselves to the ground. Even Seraphine's proud crystal griffin folded its wings. The giant guardian slowly turned its head. Its brilliant silver eye settled upon Velune. A heavy silence fell across Mooncrest Academy. Then, to everyone's astonishment, the enormous guardian bent one knee, then another. It lowered its magnificent head until its antlers almost touched the earth. It bowed, not to the headmaster, not to the professors, not to the assembled students, to Velune. The crowd erupted. Did you see that? It bowed. Again. Every legendary beast is doing it. Seraphine's face drained of color. No. That's impossible. Her crystal griffin remained kneeling, no matter how many times she tugged its feathers. Stand up. The magnificent creature refused. Its gaze never left Velune. Lumo smiled. The tiny creature waddled toward the enormous guardian. Captain Orion instinctively reached out. Wait. But the guardian lowered one gigantic paw. Its expression softened. Lumo climbed onto the massive paw as though greeting an old friend. MRP. The guardian gently lifted the tiny creature until they were eye to eye. The great beast closed its eyes. Lumo touched its nose. A wave of silver light exploded across the lake. The entire academy disappeared beneath a dome of shimmering moonlight. Students cried out in surprise. Then, everyone saw it. Not with their eyes. With their hearts. For one brief moment, Mooncrest Academy vanished. In its place stood an ancient city. Beautiful gardens stretched farther than the eye could see. Dragons rested peacefully beside rivers. Phoenixes nested among flowering trees. Cats and magical beasts laughed together. No cages, no fear, no hunters, only peace. At the center of the city stood the same elegant black cat from the hidden sanctuary. She smiled warmly as dozens of young kittens played with legendary creatures. Beside her stood a fully grown version of Lumo. Its wings stretched across the sky like the night itself. The vision lasted only seconds. Then, it vanished. The academy returned. Students looked around in stunned silence. Some were crying without understanding why. Others stared at their companions with new appreciation. Professor Hazelwisk wiped away a tear. I could feel them. Captain Orion whispered. The Age of Harmony. I thought it was only a myth. The great guardian slowly lowered Lumo back onto the grass. Then it looked at Velune. Its voice echoed directly into every mind. Not loud. Gentle. Ancient. Little Moonkeeper. Valune's heart raced. You can speak. The guardian's eyes softened. Not with words. With memory. Velune took one cautious step forward. Who are you? The guardian lowered its head respectfully. I am Arcturus, first guardian of the Moon Throne. Gasps spread throughout the crowd. Even the professors recognized the name. Arcturus, the legendary protector every history book claimed had vanished 1,000 years ago. One elderly professor dropped his notebook. Impossible. Headmaster Cedric forced himself to remain calm. Inside, his heart pounded. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not yet. Arcturus wasn't meant to awaken until much later. He slowly stepped forward, adopting his usual warm smile. Great Guardian, we welcome you to Mooncrest Academy. For the first time, Arcturus looked at him. The warmth vanished from the Guardian's eyes. Flowers surrounding Cedric immediately withered. The air turned cold. Every magical beast nearby growled. Arcturus spoke only 4 words. Bearer of false light. Cedric's smile almost cracked. Almost. Before anyone could react, Arcturus turned back to Velune. The Guardian gently lowered one enormous antler. Hanging from it was a small silver key, no larger than Valune's paw. It glowed softly beneath the morning sun. The first door awaits. The first door. Velune carefully accepted the key. The moment her paw touched it, the key projected a glowing map into the air. A winding trail stretched beyond Silverwood Forest, through forgotten mountains, until it ended at a place marked with a single silver star. Captain Orion stared. I know that place. Velune looked up. You do? He nodded slowly. The Valley of Echoes. His expression darkened. No ranger has returned from there in over 300 years. Without another word, Arcturus stepped backward. The lake welcomed the Guardian home. The water closed behind the colossal beast as though nothing had disturbed it. Within moments, the lake was perfectly calm once again. Only the glowing silver key remained in Valune's paw, and hundreds of stunned witnesses who could no longer pretend she was ordinary. Across the shoreline, students no longer whispered about the black cat bringing bad luck. Instead, they stayed with awe. One little kitten visiting the festival tugged gently on her mother's sleeve. Mom. The mother smiled softly. Yes. The kitten pointed toward Velune. Is she a queen? The mother looked at the young black cat standing quietly beside Lumo. She didn't know the answer. But somehow, it felt true. Hidden beneath his composed expression, Headmaster Cedric made a silent decision. She cannot be allowed to leave Mooncrest alive. And deep beneath the academy, Lord Malrek smiled as he watched through the pool of shadows. So, the first door has opened. He slowly reached toward another ancient relic hidden beneath a black cloth. When he pulled the cloth away, a second silver key lay beneath it. Unlike Valune's, This one was cracked and stained with ancient blood. The race has begun. The silver key glowed all night. Velune placed it on the small table beside her bed, even while she slept. Soft moonlight pulsed from it like a heartbeat. Lumo refused to leave its side. The tiny creature curled around the key as though guarding it. Outside, rain tapped gently against the dormitory windows. It should have been a peaceful night. Instead, Velune dreamed. She stood inside a forest unlike any she had ever seen. The trees shimmered with silver leaves. The sky was filled with two moons, one bright, one dark. Dozens of legendary beasts wandered peacefully between glowing flowers. They didn't seem surprised to see her. Instead, each one smiled, as if welcoming an old friend home. Ahead, a lone figure stood beside a crystal stream. A beautiful black cat with flowing midnight fur. She wore robes embroidered with stars that seemed to move across the fabric like tiny galaxies. Velune slowly approached. Who are you? The elegant cat smiled gently. I've been waiting for you. Are you the first moonkeeper? The older cat nodded. My name is Lysera. Valune's breath caught. So you're real. Lysera laughed softly. For now. What does that mean? I'm only a memory. A promise left behind. Velune wanted 100 answers. Only one escaped her lips. Why do all the beasts bow to me? Lysera's smile faded. They aren't bowing to you. They are honoring the promise you carry. What promise? Before Lysera could answer, the forest trembled. A loud crack split the sky. The second moon, the dark one, began bleeding black light. Lysera looked upward. They found you. The dream shattered. Velune woke with a gasp. Her room was filled with silver light. Not from the moon. From the key. It hovered above the table, spinning slowly. Lumo stood beneath it. MRP. The tiny creature looked surprisingly serious. Then the key drifted toward the window, stopped, and pointed east, toward the mountains beyond Silverwood Forest. Captain Orion had been right. It was calling her. An urgent meeting was held before sunrise. Present were Captain Orion, Professor Hazelwhisk, Velune, Bramble, Hazel, and, to everyone's delight, Lumo, who had somehow managed to steal 3 honey biscuits before the meeting began. MRP. The little creature happily munched while everyone else discussed ancient prophecies. Hazel couldn't help smiling. Only Lumo could make a legendary meeting feel like a picnic. Even Orion chuckled. He spread an old map across the table. The Valley of Echoes lies beyond the northern cliffs. He pointed to a narrow mountain pass. Most travelers avoid it. Why? Professor Hazelwhisk answered quietly. Because the valley remembers. Bramble blinked. Remembers what? Everyone who enters. Silence. Hazel frowned. I don't understand. The professor folded her paws. According to the oldest records, the valley shows you the truth you've hidden from yourself. Bramble swallowed nervously. I suddenly don't want to visit. Lumo finished its biscuit, then confidently pointed at the map. MRP. Apparently, it very much wanted to visit. Captain Orion looked toward Velune. I won't force this. The journey will be dangerous. You can stay here. Velune looked down at the glowing key, then at Lumo. Finally, she nodded. If the answers are waiting there. I have to go. Bramble immediately raised a paw. I'm coming. Hazel nodded too. So am I. Velune looked surprised. You don't have to. Hazel smiled warmly. Friends don't let friends walk into cursed valleys alone. Bramble adjusted his oversized glasses. Besides, I've always wanted an adventure. Captain Orion smiled. Then we leave tomorrow. Not everyone was pleased. High inside the headmaster's tower, Cedric watched the meeting through an enchanted mirror. So, they're leaving the academy. Behind him, a shadow hunter knelt. Shall we stop them? Cedric considered it, then slowly shook his head. No, outside these walls. Accidents are much easier to arrange. The next morning, students gathered at the academy gates to watch the small expedition depart. Many wished them luck. Others whispered nervous prayers. Even Seraphine came. She approached Velune quietly. I still don't understand you. Velune smiled politely. I'm not sure I understand myself. Seraphine looked toward Lumo. The tiny creature smiled and waved. MRP. For reasons she couldn't explain, Seraphine smiled back. It lasted only a second. Then she caught herself. Don't die. She turned and walked away before Velune could answer. Hazel grinned. I think that's the nicest thing she's ever said. The journey began peacefully. Silverwood Forest welcomed them with birdsong and blooming flowers. Ancient beasts watched from the trees. But unlike before, none approached. Instead, each one quietly bowed as Velune passed. Captain Orion noticed something else. They're escorting us. Velune looked around. At first, she saw nothing. Then, movement. A moon wolf pacing silently through the trees. High above, a crystal falcon gliding from branch to branch. Farther ahead, the thornback boar emerged briefly before disappearing again. They weren't following. They were protecting. By sunset, the group reached the northern cliffs. Far below, a thick silver mist covered the Valley of Echoes. Nothing beyond the mist could be seen. The air felt strangely still. No birds sang. No insects buzzed. Only silence. Captain Orion stopped. This is where ranger maps end. Hazel stared. What do you mean? He pointed toward the mist. No map has ever recorded what lies beyond. Everyone describes something different. Bramble looked uneasy. So, We're walking into somewhere that changes. Orion nodded. Exactly. Lumo, however, looked delighted. MRP. The tiny creature bounded happily into the mist. Lumo. Velune chased after it. The moment she crossed the silver veil, the world disappeared. No Orion, no Hazel, no Bramble. Only endless white mist. Lumo. Silence. Her heartbeat echoed around her. Then, footsteps. Someone emerged from the fog. A young black kitten. No older than 8. With long fluffy fur. Emerald eyes. Exactly like Velune's. The kitten smiled sadly. You left me. Velune froze. I don't know you. The kitten's eyes filled with tears. You promised. You'd come back. Before Velune could move, the mist swallowed the kitten once more. A distant voice echoed through the valley. Soft, ancient, and impossible to ignore. To find the first truth, you must first face the first lie. Far away, unseen by anyone, a pair of golden eyes watched from deep within the mist. The mysterious figure smiled. She's finally here. The silver mist swallowed every sound. Velune spun in circles. Captain Orion. No answer. Hazel. Nothing. Bramble. Only silence. Even the wind had disappeared. Lumo. A tiny voice answered somewhere nearby. MRP. Relief washed over her. Lumo. She followed the sound through the glowing mist. Every step felt strangely heavy. Almost as if the valley itself were watching her. The tiny creature finally appeared. Lumo stood beside an ancient stone bridge covered in glowing moss. It wagged its fluffy tail happily. MRP. Velune rushed forward and scooped it into her arms. I was so worried. Lumo rubbed against her cheek. The moment she hugged it, the bridge lit up. Silver symbols spread across the old stones like flowing water. Words appeared beneath her feet. Truth walks only with compassion. The bridge slowly stretched across an endless canyon hidden beneath the mist. Velune stared. There wasn't a canyon here before. Captain Orion had been right. The valley changed itself. She carefully stepped onto the bridge. The ancient stones felt warm beneath her paws. Halfway across, she heard crying. A tiny voice. Soft. Lonely. She stopped. The crying came from beneath the bridge. Looking down, she saw the same little black kitten from before. The child sat alone on a floating stone surrounded by mist. Tiny tears rolled down her cheeks. You really forgot me. Velune's heart ached. I don't know who you are. The kitten looked up. You said we'd always stay together. I would never leave you. Velune searched her memories desperately. Nothing. I'm sorry. I truly don't remember. The kitten slowly stood. That's the lie. What? You keep saying you don't remember. She pointed gently toward Velune's chest. But your heart does. Before Velune could answer, the kitten disappeared. The bridge shook violently. A voice echoed through the canyon. The first lie is believing memory lives only in the mind. The trembling stopped. Velune looked down at Lumo. The tiny creature simply nodded, as though it had known all along. Meanwhile, elsewhere inside the valley, Captain Orion found himself standing before an old wooden cabin. Smoke drifted peacefully from its chimney. He frowned. This place. He hadn't seen it in 20 years. The cabin door opened. A gentle silver tabby stepped outside. She smiled warmly. Orion. His sword slipped from his paw. Grandmother. She had died when he was only 12. Yet there she stood. Exactly as he remembered. She smiled. Come inside. You must be hungry. For one dangerous moment, he almost did. Then, he noticed something. His grandmother always wore a blue ribbon. This one wore red. Captain Orion slowly shook his head. No, you aren't her. The smiling figure remained perfectly still. Then, it smiled wider. Too wide. The cabin dissolved into mist. A deep voice whispered. Truth over comfort. Captain Orion smiled. I suppose I passed. Hazel and Bramble weren't having such an easy time. Hazel wandered through what looked like her childhood bakery. Fresh bread filled the air. Her late parents smiled from behind the counter. Stay. We've missed you. Hazel cried. She wanted nothing more. Then she remembered something. My parents never wanted me to stop living. She stepped backward. I love you. But this isn't real. The bakery vanished. Bramble stood inside the greatest library imaginable. Shelves stretched endlessly toward the sky. Every book he had ever dreamed of reading waited there. A quiet voice whispered. You can stay forever. You'll know every secret. He almost agreed. Then another thought crossed his mind. If I stay, Velune will be alone. He closed the nearest book. I'm sorry. I have friends waiting. The library disappeared. One by one, each member of the expedition rejected the valley's illusion. The silver mist began thinning. Hidden pathways slowly emerged. The valley was allowing them forward. Velune reached the opposite side of the bridge. Waiting for her was an elderly snowy white Persian cat. She wore long ceremonial robes embroidered with silver moons. Her cloudy blue eyes held incredible kindness. She bowed gracefully. I've waited a very long time. Velune blinked. You know me. I knew the one who came before you. The old cat smiled sadly. I was only a kitten when Lady Lysera visited this valley. Velune's heart raced. You knew the first moonkeeper. The elder nodded. She saved my people. Lumo happily bounced toward the old cat. MRP. She gently scratched beneath its tiny chin. I remember you too. Velune froze. What? The elder looked down lovingly. You were much bigger then. Lumo tilted its head innocently. MRP. You don't remember. Her smile became bittersweet. Perhaps that's for the best. She motioned for them to follow. The mist parted, revealing a hidden valley unlike anything Velune had imagined. Crystal waterfalls cascaded down floating cliffs. Fields of glowing lavender stretched endlessly beneath pastel skies. Ancient stone circles rested among flowering meadows. Dozens of magical beasts wandered peacefully. None showed fear. None carried scars. It felt untouched by time. At the center of the valley stood a magnificent silver tree. Its trunk was wider than the Academy's great hall. Its branches reached beyond the clouds. Every leaf shimmered like polished moonlight. The elder bowed toward the tree. This is the memory tree. Velune stepped closer. What does it do? It remembers everything. She looked at Velune with gentle eyes. When memories are too dangerous, they are entrusted here. Valune's breathing became shallow. You mean my memories? The elder nodded. They were never destroyed. They were hidden. Lumo suddenly jumped from Valune's arms. The little creature sprinted toward the great tree. MRP. As soon as its tiny paw touched the ancient bark, every silver leaf began glowing. The entire valley filled with shimmering light. The tree awakened. Thousands of glowing leaves lifted into the air like stars. One leaf drifted gently toward Velune. It landed softly in her paw. The moment she touched it, a memory flashed before her eyes. Not a dream, not a vision, a real memory. She saw herself, not as the young academy student she knew, but as a tiny black kitten, laughing, running through moonlit gardens, holding paws, with the very same little black kitten she had seen in the mist. They were sisters. The memory vanished. Velune staggered backward. Tears filled her emerald eyes. I remember. My sister. Her voice trembled. I wasn't alone. The elderly guardian smiled sadly. No, you never were. But someone worked very hard to make you believe you were. Far away, deep beneath Mooncrest Academy, Lord Malrek suddenly looked up from the pool of shadows. The water had changed. For the first time in 1,000 years, it no longer obeyed him. A single silver leaf floated across its dark surface. Malrek's smile disappeared. No. He whispered. She reached the memory tree. His voice hardened instantly. Prepare every shadow hunter. We are going to the Valley of Echoes. The silver leaf dissolved into light. Velune dropped to one knee. Tears streamed silently down her face. Not from sadness. From recognition. The tiny black kitten. The laughter. The moonlit garden. It wasn't imagination. It had happened. She had a sister. The memory tree shimmered softly. Thousands of glowing leaves drifted through the air like gentle snow. Each leaf contained someone's memories. Some joyful. Some heartbreaking. Some so ancient they belonged to cats whose names had long been forgotten. The elderly guardian stepped beside Velune. My name is Elder Myra. She rested a gentle paw on the great tree. For over 900 years. My family has protected these memories. Velune looked up. You knew my family. Elder Myra smiled warmly. I knew the last moonkeeper. Lysera. And I knew the two little kittens she entrusted to the future. Valune's breath caught. Two. She already knew the answer. You and your sister. Lumo climbed onto one of the great roots. The little creature watched another silver leaf drift toward it. MRP. The leaf landed gently on its tiny nose. Instantly, Lumo sneezed. MRPCHO. Silver sparkles exploded into the air. The floating leaves began spinning faster. Elder Myra gasped. No. The tree recognizes him. The enormous trunk glowed brighter. Ancient symbols awakened across its bark. Words appeared that no living cat had read in centuries. Captain Orion stepped closer. What does it say? Elder Myra slowly translated. When the little guardian remembers his true name, the 7 doors shall awaken. When the 7 guardians unite, the moon throne shall choose its queen. Silence settled over the valley. Hazel whispered. Queen. Bramble adjusted his glasses. I thought Moonkeeper was just a title. Elder Myra looked toward Velune. It is. She paused. But every Moonkeeper was also queen. Velune immediately shook her head. No, there has to be a mistake. I'm just a student. I barely passed my entrance examination. Lumo looked up at her. MRP. The tiny creature gently placed one paw on hers, as if saying, You're still you. Velune smiled through her tears. Thank you. Captain Orion folded his arms. If Velune truly has a sister, where is she? The warmth in Elder Myra's eyes faded. I don't know. She disappeared the night the kingdom fell. Some believed she escaped. Others believed. She hesitated. She was taken. Valune's heart pounded. Taken by who? Elder Myra looked toward the distant mountains. The eclipse. The same name again. Every answer seemed to lead back to it. Without warning, the memory tree trembled. Its glowing branches swayed violently. Leaves began falling. Not peacefully. Frantically. Elder Myra's expression changed instantly. No. She looked toward the sky. They found us. A loud horn echoed across the valley. Once. Twice. 3 times. Captain Orion drew his sword. Positions. The peaceful valley erupted into motion. Ancient guardians hurried young creatures toward hidden caves. Massive crystal bears formed protective circles around the memory tree. Moonwolves climbed the surrounding cliffs. Great eagles filled the skies. Lumo's playful expression disappeared. Its silver eyes locked onto the valley entrance. Emao. Black mist rolled over the hills. Flowers withered wherever it touched. The sunlight dimmed. Bramble whispered. They're here. Out of the darkness marched dozens of shadow hunters. Not 5. Not 10. Hundreds. Each carried black weapons forged from shadow. Behind them came enormous beasts twisted by dark magic. A once beautiful griffin whose feathers had become black crystal. A moonwolf with crimson eyes. A stone ram covered in glowing cracks. Hazel stepped backward. They corrupted them. Captain Orion nodded grimly. The eclipse has learned to poison beast bonds. The corrupted creatures looked as though they wanted to cry, but something else controlled them. Velune's heart broke. They are suffering. The shadow hunter stopped. Then, a single figure walked calmly through their ranks. Unlike the others, he wore no mask. His long silver fur was streaked with black. One golden eye, one crimson eye, a cruel smile. Lord Malrek. He looked older than anyone Velune had ever met. Yet his posture was perfectly straight, elegant, confident. He slowly applauded. Magnificent. His voice echoed gently across the valley. So, the memory tree still stands. Elder Myra stepped protectively in front of Velune. You are not welcome here. Malrek smiled. I've heard that before. He looked directly at Velune. You've grown. Velune frowned. You know me. His smile widened. I've known you since the day you were born. Captain Orion immediately stepped between them. You won't touch her. Malrek laughed. I have no interest in harming her. He looked toward Lumo. The little one is another matter. Lumo instinctively hid behind Velune's leg. MRP. Malrek slowly extended one paw. Come here. The tiny creature refused. Instead, it stuck out its tiny tongue. Blah. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Hazel snorted. Bramble covered his mouth. Even Captain Orion struggled not to smile. Lord Malrek blinked. Slowly. He wasn't accustomed to being mocked. Especially not by something small enough to fit inside a teacup. The little creature puffed out its fluffy chest proudly. MRP. Malrek's smile disappeared. I see. So that's your choice. He raised one finger. Every shadow hunter drew their weapons. The valley shook. Ancient guardians roared. Captain Orion lifted his sword. Protect the memory tree. The feist battle for the future of Etheria had begun. Just as the two armies charged, a voice thundered across the valley. So impatient. Everyone froze. The voice had not come from either army. It came from the memory tree itself. The massive trunk cracked open with a deafening roar. Silver light burst into the heavens. And from within the ancient tree, a graceful figure stepped into the light. A beautiful long-haired black cat wearing robes woven from moonlight itself. She looked exactly like the cat from Velune's dreams. Exactly like the statues. Exactly like the visions. Lady Lysera, the first moonkeeper. Every cat in the valley stood speechless. Lord Malrek's eyes widened for the first time in centuries. Impossible. Lysera smiled serenely. No, Malrek. You'll find. I'm simply very difficult to forget. The valley fell completely silent. No swords clashed. No beasts roared. Even the wind stopped. Every eye remained fixed on the glowing figure stepping from the heart of the memory tree. Lady Lysera. She looked exactly as Velune had seen her in dreams. Long midnight black fur shimmered with silver starlight. Elegant robes flowed like liquid moonlight around her. Her emerald eyes held both endless kindness and unimaginable sorrow. She wasn't transparent. She wasn't a ghost. She seemed real. Lord Malrek's confident smile disappeared. For the first time in centuries, he took one cautious step backward. No. I watched you die. Lysera smiled gently. You watched my body fall. You never understood the difference. Malrek's crimson eye narrowed. You sealed your spirit. I entrusted it. She rested one paw against the memory tree. To those who would come after me. The ancient tree pulsed with silver light. Thousands of glowing leaves circled around her like a living crown. Velune couldn't breathe. You're really Lady Lysera. The moonkeeper turned. The moment she saw Velune, her smile became softer, warmer, almost maternal. There you are. I've missed you. Velune's eyes filled with tears. You know me. I know every version of you. Lysera stepped closer, though her paws never quite touched the ground. I watched your first steps. I heard your first laugh. I held you. The night the stars disappeared. Velune's voice trembled. Why can't I remember? Lysera's expression became heavy. Because I asked someone to take those memories. Captain Orion frowned. You chose to forget. No. Lysera slowly shook her head. I chose to let her live. Lord Malrek laughed bitterly, still pretending sacrifice makes you noble. He slowly drew a long black sword from his side. Its blade seemed to swallow the light around it. You lost. Your kingdom fell. Your guardians scattered. Your throne became dust. Lysera looked at him without anger. You've confused victory with survival. The words struck harder than any weapon. The shadow hunters waited. None dared move until Malrek gave the order. Captain Orion quietly whispered, everyone stay behind Lysera. Elder Myra shook her head. Look. The moonkeeper wasn't standing in front of them anymore. She had somehow crossed the battlefield without anyone seeing her move. Now she stood directly before the corrupted moonwolf. The beast snarled. Black smoke poured from its mouth. Its crimson eyes burned with pain. Lysera gently reached toward its face. Captain Orion's heart stopped. No. The beast lunged. Its enormous jaws closed around her paw. Nothing happened. Instead, the corrupted wolf froze. Its growl slowly faded into a whimper. Lysera gently stroked behind its ears. There you are. I knew you were still inside. Silver tears rolled from the wolf's crimson eyes. The black corruption cracked. Like glass, light poured through the cracks. With one final shudder, the darkness shattered completely. The wolf's fur returned to brilliant silver. Its crimson eyes became soft sapphire blue. The freed guardian collapsed at Lysera's feet, crying, not from pain, from relief. Every corrupted beast began trembling. The crystal griffin, the stone ram, the shadow elk, each looked toward Lysera, as though remembering someone they had loved long ago. Malrek's calm expression finally broke. Impossible. The eclipse mark cannot be removed. Lysera smiled sadly. It cannot. She looked lovingly at the freed wolf. But fear can. One by one, the corrupted beasts broke free. Black crystal shattered. Dark chains dissolved. The valley echoed with joyful cries as ancient guardians returned to themselves. Shadow hunters stepped backward in confusion. Their greatest weapons were abandoning them. Lumo bounced excitedly toward the freed moon wolf. MRP. The enormous wolf lowered its head. Lumo immediately climbed onto its nose. The wolf blinked. Then sneezed. Lumo tumbled backward into a pile of flowers. MRP. The tiny creature blinked in surprise. The entire valley burst into laughter. Even Elder Myra laughed so hard she wiped away tears. For one precious moment, the fear vanished. The battle disappeared. Everyone simply laughed. Even Captain Orion smiled. This little one has impossible timing. Malrek wasn't amused. His voice thundered across the valley. Enough! The laughter stopped. Dark clouds gathered overhead. Black lightning tore across the sky. Malrek lifted his sword. I spent 1,000 years building my kingdom. I buried every trace of yours. I hunted every guardian. I erased every story. He pointed toward Velune. And I will erase the last Moonkeeper. Before anyone could react, he vanished. Captain Orion shouted. Velune. Too late. Malrek appeared directly in front of her. His sword descended. Velune instinctively closed her eyes. She expected pain. Instead, she heard clink, a tiny sound. She opened her eyes. Lumo. The little creature stood on its hind legs. One tiny paw pressed against Malrek's enormous black sword. The impossible happened. The sword stopped. It couldn't move another inch. Malrek stared. His full strength couldn't push past one tiny fluffy paw. Lumo looked up innocently. MRP. As if wondering why everyone seemed so shocked. The black sword began glowing. Not with darkness. With silver light. Cracks spread across its blade. Malrek's eyes widened. No. This weapon was forged to kill. The sword shattered. Thousands of black fragments scattered across the valley like broken glass. Silence. Complete silence. Even the shadow hunters looked horrified. Malrek slowly looked down at Lumo. For the first time, there was no arrogance in his eyes. Only fear. Real fear. He whispered one ancient name. Lumina. The tiny creature tilted its head. MRP. The name meant nothing to it, but it meant everything. To Malrek. Lysera closed her eyes sadly. So, you remember him after all. Malrek took another step backward. His breathing became uneven. The Guardian King. It can't be. Lysera looked toward the confused little creature happily chasing one of the broken sword fragments like it was a shiny toy. It is. She smiled. He simply forgot. Far above the valley, the clouds parted. One ray of moonlight fell directly upon Lumo. The tiny creature looked up. For just one heartbeat, its shadow wasn't tiny anymore. The shadow stretched across the valley. Great wings unfolded. A magnificent crowned guardian stood where the little creature's shadow should have been. Then, the vision disappeared. Lumo sneezed. MR Pichu. And promptly fell over backward trying to catch a glowing butterfly. The valley laughed again. But this time, Lord Malrek did not. Because he had finally realized the truth. The smallest creature in the world was also the most dangerous. No one spoke. The valley stood frozen beneath the moonlight. The shattered pieces of Malrek's legendary sword lay scattered across the grass. A weapon that had survived 1,000 years. Destroyed by one tiny paw. Lumo blinked. It picked up one of the black fragments. Turned it over curiously. Then, dropped it. MRP. Apparently, it wasn't interesting anymore. Instead, the little creature noticed a bright blue butterfly fluttering nearby. It immediately forgot the greatest moment in history. MRP. And happily chased after it. Captain Orion slowly lowered his sword. I don't believe this. Hazel laughed softly. That may be the strongest creature in existence. And it still gets distracted by butterflies. Even Lady Lysera smiled. Some things never change. Lord Malrek remained perfectly still. His mismatched eyes never left Lumo. Lumina. He whispered the name again. This time, the tiny creature stopped. The butterfly landed on its nose. Lumo didn't chase it away. Its silver eyes slowly widened. For just a heartbeat, something flickered. A memory. A battlefield beneath 2 moons. Countless guardians kneeling. A black cat laughing. A silver crown. Then, pain. Chains. Darkness. The vision vanished. Lumo stumbled backward. MO. Velune immediately knelt beside it. Lumo. The little creature looked frightened. It pressed itself against her chest. She gently stroked its fluffy head. It's all right. I'm here. Lumo buried its face in her fur. Slowly, its trembling stopped. Lady Lysera watched quietly. The memories are returning. But only a little. Captain Orion frowned. Why so slowly? Because someone didn't merely erase them. They shattered them. Malrek finally found his voice. So, you failed. Lysera looked at him calmly. No, you did. He laughed bitterly. You call this victory? The moon throne is gone. The kingdoms fell. The guardians scattered. The guardian king remembers nothing. And Yo A doesn't even know who she is. He spread his arms dramatically. What exactly did you save? Lysera didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked around the valley. At Eldermira. At Captain Orion. At Hazel. At Bramble. At the freed guardians. Finally, at Velune. Then she smiled. Hope. Silence. She continued. You spent 1,000 years trying to erase kindness. And yet! She nodded toward Velune. The first thing she did was save creatures everyone else feared. She looked toward Lumo. The first thing he did was choose friendship over power. Then toward Orion. And the first thing you did was stand between darkness and a frightened student. Her emerald eyes met Malrek's. You preserved fear. We preserved love. Tell me honestly. Which one grew stronger? For the first time, Malrek had no answer. Suddenly, the memory tree shook again. Not violently, urgently. Silver leaves swirled around Lumo. One leaf landed gently on its forehead. The little creature closed its eyes. A soft voice escaped its lips. Not MRP. Not this time. One clear word. Lies. Lady Lysera's eyes filled with tears. You remember my name. Lumo slowly opened its eyes. It looked confused. I. The tiny voice sounded different. Older. I know. It held its head, as though trying to remember a forgotten song. I know you. The words faded. Lumo blinked, then immediately sneezed. MRP. The moment was gone. Hazel smiled. So close. Without warning, the silver key in Velune's pocket began glowing fiercely. It floated into the air. The cracked black key hanging from Malrek's belt answered. Dark light erupted from it. The two keys pulled toward each other. Captain Orion shouted. Everyone back. The keys collided. Instead of exploding, they projected a giant map across the night sky. 7 silver stars appeared across the continent. Each marked a hidden sanctuary. One star, the Valley of Echoes, began shining brightly. The second star started pulsing. It lay far to the east, beyond the crystal desert, deep within the Skyglass Mountains. Words slowly appeared beneath the map. The second door has awakened. Guardian required. The message faded. The silver key gently returned to Velune's paw. Malrek stared at the second location. No. Lysera smiled knowingly. You know that place. He remained silent. Captain Orion noticed. You've been there. Still. No answer. Eldermira suddenly gasped. She pointed toward the eastern horizon. Look. A silver beam of light had appeared in the distance. It stretched from the earth to the heavens, visible even across hundreds of miles. Every guardian in the valley turned toward it. The freed moon wolf bowed. The crystal griffin spread its wings. The memory tree shimmered joyfully. Lysera nodded. The second guardian has awakened. Velune looked at her. What does that mean? It means. Lysera's smile faded slightly. You no longer have time. She walked toward Velune. Very gently, she placed one glowing paw against the young black cat's forehead. I cannot leave this valley. My spirit is bound here. But you can. Silver light flowed between them. Velune suddenly saw another memory. Not her own. Lysera standing beside 7 enormous guardians. One was Arcturo's. Another was a magnificent winged wolf made of stars. A third resembled a whale swimming through the sky. The remaining guardians stood hidden behind brilliant light. The vision disappeared. There are 7. Velune whispered. Lysera nodded. And each guards one door. If Malrek reaches them first. Her voice grew heavy. The world will forget compassion. Lumo looked up. Lysera smiled. Which is why. She gently booped the tiny creature's nose. You must remember. Before Lumo could respond, a deafening roar echoed across the valley. Not from the shadow hunters. Not from the guardians. From the mountains beyond. The eastern beam of light suddenly flickered. Then cracked. Captain Orion's expression changed instantly. No. Lysera looked toward the horizon. Someone else had reached the second door. From within the fading pillar of light, a graceful silhouette emerged. A long-haired black cat, almost identical to Velune. Golden eyes, a silver cloak. She held the second key in one paw, and standing behind her, kneeling in absolute loyalty, was a colossal winged wolf made entirely of stars. Velune stared in disbelief. The stranger slowly looked across the impossible distance, directly at her, then smiled. Not warmly, coldly. Lady Lysera closed her eyes. So, they found your sister first. The valley fell into stunned silence. No one could take their eyes off the glowing figure standing within the distant pillar of light. She looked almost identical to Velune. The same flowing black fur, the same graceful posture, the same elegant ears. Only, her eyes shone like molten gold instead of emerald green. Around her neck hung a silver pendant shaped like a full moon. Behind her stood the colossal winged wolf made entirely of stars. The magnificent guardian lowered its head to her. Not out of fear, out of devotion. Velune's voice barely rose above a whisper. My sister. Lady Lysera's expression was filled with sorrow. Yes. Her name is. She paused, almost as if speaking the name carried its own weight. Vespa. The name echoed through the valley. Velune quietly repeated it. Vespa. For some reason, the name felt familiar, comforting, like the final piece of a forgotten lullaby. A single tear slipped down her cheek. Far across the mountains, Vespa continued watching. Though separated by hundreds of miles, it felt as though the sisters were standing face to face. Neither spoke, neither moved. The wind carried only silence between them. Then, very slowly, Vespa lifted one paw. Not to attack, not to wave. She simply touched the silver pendant resting over her heart. Velune instinctively mirrored the motion. Her own chest suddenly became warm. Beneath her tunic, something shimmered. Captain Orion frowned. Velune. She looked down. Hidden beneath the fabric, a second pendant had appeared. A crescent moon embracing a tiny star. The very same symbol that had followed her since arriving at Mooncrest. It had never truly been lost. It had simply been invisible. Lumo climbed onto Velune's shoulder. The tiny creature stayed at Vespa. Its silver eyes widened. Then, a single word escaped its lips. V. Everyone turned. Captain Orion's eyes widened. Lumo. The little creature looked confused. It touched its own throat, as if surprised it had spoken. V. Again. A little clearer. Vespa heard it. Across the impossible distance, her golden eyes softened. For the first time, her calm expression cracked. She whispered something no one else could hear. Lumi. Lady Lycera smiled sadly. You both remember each other. Just not yourselves. Lord Malric stepped beside Vespa. His expression remained unreadable. He looked toward Velune. You're wondering why your sister stands beside me. Velune nodded. I would never willingly join someone like you. Malric laughed softly. Wouldn't she? Before Velune could answer, Vespa finally spoke. Her voice was calm, gentle, almost identical to Velune's. Don't. Everyone looked toward her. She wasn't speaking to Velune. She was speaking to Malric. Don't lie. The valley became silent again. Malric slowly turned his head. What did you say? Vespa met his gaze without fear. I said. Don't lie to her. Captain Orion frowned. What is she doing? Lady Lycera smiled faintly. She's stronger than he realizes. Vespa looked directly at Velune. I was never his prisoner. Malric's eyes narrowed. I chose to stay. Gasps spread across the valley. Velune shook her head. No. Why? Vespa closed her eyes briefly. When we were separated. I remembered. You forgot. She slowly opened her golden eyes again. Someone had to watch him. Velune's breath caught. You're spying on him. Malric laughed. A genuine laugh this time. Oh, little moonkeeper. He looked almost amused. Do you truly believe I never noticed? Silence. Vespa didn't answer. Because she already knew. Malric had always known. He smiled at both sisters. I raised her. Velune's heart sank. When she woke, she had no one. So I gave her food. I taught her to fight. I answered every question. He folded his paws behind his back. I became the father she never had. Vespa quietly lowered her head. But, she whispered, you also lied. Malric's smile faded. I omitted. You manipulated. I protected. You imprisoned. I loved. No. For the first time, Vespa's voice became firm. You needed me. You didn't love me. The valley remained deathly still. Even the shadow hunters looked uncomfortable. Velune's heart broke. Her sister had spent centuries beside the enemy. Not because she was evil. Because she had been alone. Exactly as Velune had been. Just in a different way. Lady Lycera quietly spoke. Neither of you was abandoned. You were hidden. So one day, you could find each other again. Suddenly, the second guardian, the colossal winged wolf behind Vespa, lifted its enormous head. It looked toward Lumo. Not Vespa. Lumo. The tiny creature blinked. Emma. The giant guardian lowered itself respectfully. Then, to everyone's astonishment, it bowed. Not to Vespa. To Lumo. The valley gasped. Even Vespa looked surprised. Lumina. She whispered. You remember him. The great guardian spoke in a voice like wind passing through the stars. I remember my king. Lumo tilted its head, then looked behind itself. Emma. As though checking whether someone else was standing there. Hazel laughed despite the tension. I don't think Lumo realizes they are talking about him. Lumo proudly puffed out its tiny chest anyway. Apparently, being called king sounded nice. Without warning, the silver beam around Vespa began collapsing. Cracks spread through the pillar of light. The second door was closing. Vespa's expression changed immediately. I don't have much time. She looked desperately at Velune. Listen carefully. The headmaster. The light flickered violently. Malric raised one hand. Black chains erupted from the ground around Vespa. She tore through them. But the interruption was enough. Velune. She shouted. Don't trust. The pillar exploded into silver light. The image vanished. The mountains became dark once more. Silence. Only one thing remained where Vespa had stood. A single black feather. It drifted slowly through the air, landing gently at Velune's feet. Captain Orion picked it up. His expression hardened. That's not from the shadow hunters. Velune looked at him. Then whose is it? Lady Lycera's gentle smile disappeared. There is another player. One. Even Malric fears. Far beyond the Skyglass Mountains. On the highest floating island in the world. A magnificent raven the size of a castle opened its glowing sapphire eyes. Upon its back stood a lone figure wrapped in white robes. The mysterious cat smiled as she looked toward the distant moonkeeper. So, the twins have found each other. She extended one elegant paw. The giant raven spread its wings. The sky itself darkened beneath their shadow. Perhaps. It's finally time for me to come home. The black feather rested in Velune's paw. It looked ordinary, soft, weightless, yet the moment she touched it, a faint melody echoed inside her mind. Not words. A lullaby. The same lullaby from her dream. The one she and Vesper had sung together as kittens. A tear slipped down her cheek. She's still trying to protect me. Lady Lysera smiled gently. Always. Morning arrived over the Valley of Echoes. Golden sunlight poured across fields of lavender. Ancient guardians gathered near the memory tree. Word had spread quickly. The second door had awakened. The journey had to begin immediately. Captain Orion unfolded a fresh map. The Skyglass Mountains are nearly 5 days east. He traced a narrow route. We'll have to cross the Crystal Desert first. Hazel frowned. I've heard travelers lose their way there. They do. Captain Orion nodded. The sand reflects memories instead of sunlight. Bramble sighed. So we're leaving one magical place for another magical place that tries to confuse us. Hazel laughed. Adventure sounded much simpler in books. Lumo had discovered a family of tiny pastel blue butterflies. MRP. The little creature bounced happily after them. One butterfly landed on its nose. Another perched on its tail. Lumo froze cross-eyed trying to look at both. It wobbled, lost its balance, and gently rolled down a grassy hill. MRP. The butterflies floated after it as if they were all playing together. The nearby moonwolves watched. Several actually wagged their tails. Even Elder Myra couldn't hide a smile. No matter how serious things become, he always reminds us to laugh. Before the group departed, Lady Lysera called Velune aside. The ancient moonkeeper held a small velvet pouch. I've kept this for 1,000 years. Velune accepted it carefully. Inside were 7 tiny crystal seeds. Each shimmered with soft silver light. What are they? The seeds of renewal. Lysera closed Velune's paw around them. They cannot destroy darkness. They do something far more powerful. What? They remind forgotten places how to bloom. Velune looked at the tiny seeds. They're beautiful. They're hope. Captain Orion signaled the expedition. It is time. Ancient guardians lined the valley entrance. One by one, they bowed, not as subjects, as companions wishing their friends a safe journey. Arcturus emerged briefly from the lake beside the valley. The colossal guardian lowered his magnificent head. Walk with courage, little moonkeeper. Velune smiled warmly. I'll come back. I know. Lumo enthusiastically saluted with one tiny paw. MRP. Arcturus chuckled, a deep, rolling sound like distant thunder. And you, little king? Lumo blinked. MR. Try not to get into trouble. The tiny creature nodded very seriously, then immediately tripped over its own tail. Everyone laughed. The journey east began peacefully. The forest gradually gave way to rolling hills. The hills became rocky plains. By the 3rd day, grass disappeared altogether. Only endless white sand stretched toward the horizon. The Crystal Desert. Unlike ordinary deserts, its sand sparkled with pastel shades of pink, blue, lavender and silver. Every grain looked like tiny polished gems. Beautiful. Almost unreal. Hazel smiled. I've never seen anything like this. Captain Orion remained cautious. Stay close. The desert enjoys playing tricks. At first, nothing happened. The journey was calm. The breeze was gentle. The sky remained cloudless. Then Bramble stopped walking. Mom. Everyone turned. He was staring into the distance. There, standing among the shimmering dunes, was a smiling brown tabby cat waving happily. Bramble. Hazel frowned. Who's there? I. He blinked. Can't you see her? Captain Orion immediately grabbed his shoulder. Don't follow. But she's calling me. Exactly. The smiling figure dissolved into glittering sand. Bramble looked down. She wasn't real. Captain Orion nodded. The desert reflects what your heart misses most. Hours later, Hazel froze. Ahead stood the little bakery from her childhood. Fresh bread drifted through the air. She smiled sadly, then shook her head. Not today. The bakery disappeared. The illusion had no power over her anymore. Velune experienced something different. She didn't see a place. She saw a playground. 2 tiny black kittens raced through tall moonflowers. One laughed loudly. The other chased after her. Vesper. The memory lingered longer this time. Velune smiled through tears. I remember. We used to race. Lumo looked up. Emma. You always cheated. She laughed softly. You climbed the flowers instead of running around them. The memory faded. But this time, it left warmth instead of pain. As sunset approached, the group reached the center of the desert. Something enormous stood there. Not a creature. A monument. An immense arch carved entirely from transparent crystal. It shimmered with every color of the pastel sky. Bramble gasped. How is it standing? Captain Orion frowned. It wasn't here the last time I crossed. Words slowly appeared across the crystal. Only those who walk together may pass. The sand beneath them began trembling. Great cracks split across the desert floor. From each crack, a towering crystal sentinel emerged. They resembled giant armored cats sculpted from flawless glass. Their glowing blue eyes fixed upon the travelers. Hazel whispered. I count. 12. Captain Orion tightened his grip on his sword. I was hoping for fewer. The sentinels did not attack. Instead, they each took one heavy step forward. then spoke together. Their voices echoed like ringing crystal bells. Show us your unity. Before anyone could ask what they meant, the desert vanished. Not physically, only around them. Each member of the group suddenly stood on a different floating crystal platform, separated by vast empty space. Velune looked around in alarm. Captain, I'm here. His voice echoed somewhere far away. Hazel, I'm all right. Bramble, I think so. Even Lumo had landed on its own tiny platform. It looked around, confused. Emma. The platform slowly began drifting apart. Father, father. A deep voice echoed across the crystal arch. The second door cannot be opened. By one heart alone. Then, without warning, the platform beneath Lumo cracked. The tiny creature squeaked. MRP. A piece broke away beneath its paws. Velune's heart stopped. Lumo. The little guardian began slipping toward the endless glowing void below, and there was no way to reach him. Lumo. Velune lunged instinctively. Her paws grasped nothing but air. The floating crystal platforms continued drifting farther apart. Below them, an endless sea of glowing light stretched into infinity. Lumo scrambled desperately. MRP. Tiny cracks raced beneath its paws. One more step, and the platform would collapse. Captain Orion tried to leap toward the little guardian. The moment he jumped, an invisible force gently pushed him back. He landed hard on his own platform. What? He tried again. The barrier remained. Hazel reached toward Velune. Nothing. Bramble threw his backpack across the gap. It simply floated back to him. No! He whispered. We're trapped. Above them, the crystal sentinels watched silently. Their glowing blue eyes never blinked. The crystal arch spoke again. Its voice echoed across the empty sky. Strength cannot cross. Captain Orion lowered his sword. Speed cannot cross. Hazel stopped searching for spells. Knowledge cannot cross. Bramble slowly lowered the ancient book he had been clutching. The voice became gentler. Only hearts that choose one another may become one path. Silence followed. No one understood. Lumo's platform cracked again. The tiny creature slipped. One fluffy paw barely caught the edge. MRP. Its frightened cry echoed through the crystal world. Velune felt her heart shatter. No. She fell to her knees. Please. Don't take him. A soft voice spoke beside her. Not from the sentinels. Not from Captain Orion. From Lady Lysera's memory within her heart. Velune. What is a moonkeeper? Velune closed her eyes. The answer came naturally. Someone who protects. How? She thought about everything that had happened. Not by fighting. Not by commanding. By caring. She slowly stood. Instead of trying to reach Lumo, she did something unexpected. She sat down, cross-legged, closed her eyes, placed one paw over her heart. Captain Orion looked confused. Velune. She smiled softly. I trust him. Everyone stared. Hazel whispered. What? Velune looked at the frightened little creature. I know you're scared. But you're not alone. I'll always find you. No matter where you are. Lumo stopped struggling. It looked at Velune. Its breathing slowed. Ow. Then, the tiny creature smiled. The silver pendant beneath Velune's cloak began glowing. At the same moment, Lumo's tiny chest glowed too. A thread of silver light stretched between them. Thin as spider silk, beautiful as moonlight. The crystal sentinels all bowed their heads simultaneously. Captain Orion whispered. A bond thread. The glowing thread thickened. Then another appeared. Between Velune and Hazel. Another. Between Velune and Bramble. Another. Captain Orion. Even the freed moonwolf watching from afar. One by one, every friendship Velune had built became visible. Not chains. Not ropes. Gentle ribbons of silver light. The entire crystal world lit up with countless glowing connections. Hazel stared in amazement. So that's what they meant. The crystal arch spoke once more. True strength is never carried alone. The silver threads wove together. Slowly, they became a magnificent crystal bridge suspended across the void. Not built from stone. Not built from magic. Built from trust. Velune smiled. I knew you'd come. She walked calmly across the glowing bridge. Each step caused flowers of crystal light to bloom beneath her paws. She reached Lumo just as the platform finally shattered. The tiny creature leaped into her arms. MRP. It hugged her face so tightly she almost fell backward. Velune laughed through happy tears. I've got you. You'll always be safe with me. Lumo licked her nose. The crystal sentinels smiled. Not with their mouths. With their eyes. The floating platforms gently reunited. Captain Orion, Hazel, and Bramble crossed the crystal bridge toward them. Bramble immediately hugged both Velune and Lumo. I thought we lost you. Hazel joined the hug. So did I. Captain Orion smiled quietly. He wasn't usually one for hugs. But, he gently rested one paw on Velune's shoulder. You chose trust over fear. Velune looked at him. It felt right. He nodded. It always does. The 12 crystal sentinels stepped aside. The enormous crystal arch slowly opened. Beyond it, the skyglass mountains finally came into view. Towering peaks of shimmering crystal rose into pastel clouds. Waterfalls flowed upward instead of downward. Floating islands drifted lazily between the cliffs. Rainbows arched from mountain to mountain. It was the most breathtaking place any of them had ever seen. Hazel gasped. It's beautiful. Captain Orion's smile quickly faded. Yes. And dangerous. As the group crossed beneath the arch, the lead crystal sentinel spoke directly to Velune. Its voice was softer now, almost kind. Moonkeeper. Velune turned. Yes. The sentinel slowly knelt. The second guardian waits. But another heart waits first. Velune frowned. My sister. The sentinel nodded. One sister remembers love. It paused, then continued. The other remembers loss. Before Velune could ask what it meant, the sentinel returned to stone. High above the mountains, hidden among the floating islands, Vesper stood quietly beside the colossal star wolf. She looked toward the approaching travelers. They are almost here. The star wolf lowered its head. Will you tell her? Vesper closed her golden eyes. I don't know if I can. You must. A tear slipped down her cheek. Because if I tell her the truth, she may never forgive me. Far behind them, hidden in the shadows of another floating island, a white-robed figure watched both sisters with quiet interest. Perched beneath her was the gigantic sapphire raven. The mysterious cat smiled faintly. So, the final game begins. As the raven spread its enormous wings, one brilliant white feather drifted silently toward the mountains. Unlike the black feather before it, this one glowed with hope. The sky-glass mountains shimmered beneath the morning sun. Towering crystal cliffs reflected pastel shades of lavender, pink, blue, and silver. Floating waterfalls poured upward into the clouds. Gentle breezes carried glowing flower petals through the air. It looked peaceful. Too peaceful. Captain Orion quietly scanned the cliffs. I don't like this. Hazel looked around. Why? It's quiet. Bramble blinked. Isn't quiet a good thing? The veteran ranger slowly shook his head. Not in places this ancient. Lumo, of course. Loved it. MRP. The tiny guardian bounded after glowing crystal birds that fluttered between the floating rocks. One landed on Lumo's head. Another perched on its tail. A third landed right on its nose. Lumo crossed its eyes trying to look at all three at once. It spun in a tiny circle, lost its balance, and gently flopped onto a bed of soft pastel flowers. The crystal birds chirped happily. Even Captain Orion laughed. I think every creature in Etheria likes him. The narrow mountain path eventually opened into a breathtaking valley hidden among the peaks. In the center stood an enormous crystal lake. Its water reflected the sky so perfectly. It looked as though another world existed beneath its surface. Floating above the lake, suspended by beams of silver light, was an ancient temple made entirely of translucent crystal. The second sanctuary. Velune stopped walking. So beautiful. Lady Lysera's voice echoed gently inside her heart. The Skyglass Sanctuary. Where hearts are weighed before power is given. Before they could take another step, a familiar voice drifted across the lake. You came. Velune's breath caught. Standing on the crystal bridge leading toward the sanctuary was Vesper. She looked exactly as before. Long flowing black fur, golden eyes, a silver cloak dancing gently in the breeze. But now, there were no shadow hunters beside her. No Lord Malrek. Only the great star wolf sitting quietly behind her. Velune slowly stepped forward. Vesper. For several long seconds, neither sister moved. Neither spoke. Then, Vesper smiled. A real smile. Not cold. Not distant. The kind of smile only family could recognize. I always wondered if you'd still smile the same way. Velune's eyes filled with tears. I don't know what to say. You don't have to. They slowly walked toward one another. Captain Orion instinctively moved forward. Vesper raised one paw. I came alone. The star wolf remained seated, watching peacefully. Captain Orion stopped. He could sense no danger, only sadness. When the sisters finally stood face to face, neither knew what to do. Should they hug? Should they ask questions? Should they cry? Instead, Velune quietly asked, Were you lonely? Vesper froze. Out of every possible question, she hadn't expected that one. A tiny laugh escaped her. Every day, Velune gently embraced her. Without hesitation. Without fear. Vesper stood completely still. Then, very slowly, she hugged her little sister back. The star wolf quietly looked away, giving them privacy. Hazel wiped away tears. Bramble sniffled loudly. Captain Orion pretended something had flown into his eye. Lumo happily ran toward the sisters. MRP. The tiny guardian squeezed between them, demanding its own hug. Both sisters laughed. Together. For the first time in centuries, Vesper picked Lumo up. The little creature gently touched her cheek. Emma. Her golden eyes widened. You still remember me? Lumo blinked, then happily licked her nose. Apparently, that answered the question. The peaceful reunion didn't last. Vesper's smile slowly faded. I don't have much time. Velune nodded. You tried warning me. I did. The headmaster. She looked directly into Velune's eyes. Works for neither side. Captain Orion frowned. What do you mean? He isn't loyal to Malrek. He isn't loyal to the Moonkeepers. Then who? Vesper's voice became quiet. Himself. He wants the Moon Throne. Everyone fell silent. Captain Orion's expression hardened. I suspected as much. Vesper continued. Malrek believes Cedric serves him. Cedric believes he can betray Malrek. They are both wrong. Hazel whispered. So everyone is betraying everyone. Bramble sighed. I officially hate politics. Velune reached for Vesper's paw. Come with us. The older sister smiled sadly. I can't. Why not? Instead of answering, Vesper slowly rolled back one sleeve. Everyone gasped. Around her wrist, a glowing black mark wrapped like living vines. The eclipse mark. Captain Orion stepped forward. They chained you. Vespa nodded. If I move too far from Malric, the mark begins consuming my life. Velune immediately shook her head. We'll remove it. Vespa smiled. I knew you'd say that. Lumo suddenly climbed onto Vespa's shoulder. The tiny guardian gently placed one paw on the black mark. Silver light appeared. The dark vines immediately recoiled. Not disappearing, but weakening. Vespa gasped. It hurts less. Lysera's voice echoed inside Velune's heart. Lumina cannot break the curse yet. But he reminded it that it no longer owns her. A single black vine crumbled into dust. Vespa smiled through tears. Thank you. She scratched gently beneath Lumo's tiny chin. The little creature purred loudly. MRP. Suddenly, the crystal lake began glowing. Ripples spread across the perfectly still water. The star wolf stood. Its ease lifted. It has begun. The second sanctuary slowly awakened. The floating temple descended toward the lake. Massive crystal doors opened with a deep, resonating hum. Inside, soft silver light poured into the valley. Then, a voice echoed across the mountains. Ancient, gentle, powerful. Only truth may enter. Everyone instinctively looked toward one another. The voice continued. Each traveler must surrender one secret. Captain Orion sighed. I had a feeling this mountain wasn't going to make things easy. Before anyone could respond, the crystal floor beneath the sanctuary began glowing. 5 circles of light appeared. One beneath Velune, one beneath Captain Orion, one beneath Hazel, one beneath Bramble, and one beneath Lumo. The tiny guardian looked down. Emma. Its circle glowed brighter than all the others combined. The ancient voice suddenly changed. Almost surprised. Impossible. The sanctuary itself seemed to tremble. Thousands of crystal chimes rang throughout the mountains. The star wolf slowly lowered its head. Even Vespa looked stunned. What is it? The sanctuary answered. The Guardian King has brought with him. A long pause followed, as if even the ancient magic struggled to believe what it had discovered. Then, the voice whispered in awe. An 8th door. Every cat in the valley stared at Lumo. Lumo stayed back, then noticed its own reflection in the crystal floor. It waved happily at itself. MRP. Silence swept across the skyglass sanctuary. Even the wind stopped. Every crystal bell hanging from the floating temple chimed at once. The ancient voice echoed again. This time, not with authority, with wonder. The 8th door has awakened. Captain Orion slowly lowered his sword. I've studied every legend. There were only 7. Lady Lysera's voice whispered gently within Velune's heart. So did I. Until now. Lumo looked around in confusion. Emma. The tiny guardian pointed at itself, then at everyone else, as if asking, who are you all talking about? Hazel couldn't help laughing. I don't think he's figured it out yet. Lumo proudly puffed out its tiny chest anyway. Being the center of attention seemed nice. Then, a tiny crystal butterfly landed on its nose. Lumo instantly forgot everything. MRP. It began chasing the butterfly around the glowing circle. The ancient sanctuary watched in complete silence. Apparently, no one had ever seen the Guardian King run in circles after butterflies before. The crystal floor beneath Lumo continued glowing. Slowly, an 8th symbol appeared. It was unlike the other 7. The 7 guardian doors were carved as circles surrounding a crescent moon. This symbol surrounded them all, like a gentle embrace. The sanctuary spoke. The 7 doors protect the world. The 8th. A pause. Protects the hearts of those who protect it. Velune frowned. I don't understand. Neither did anyone else. Vespa stepped closer. The old stories never mentioned an 8th. The star wolf lowered its massive head thoughtfully. They couldn't. Why not? Because it was never meant to exist. Everyone looked toward the guardian. Its silver eyes rested on Lumo. When the first moonkeeper sacrificed everything, history changed. Suddenly, the sanctuary walls shimmered. The crystal transformed into living memories, not dreams. History. Everyone watched in silence. 1,000 years earlier, the original Moon Kingdom stood beneath twin moons. Legendary guardians filled peaceful streets. Young kittens laughed beside dragons. Phoenixes rested upon rooftops. Moon wolves played gently with children. At the center of the kingdom, Lady Lysera smiled. Beside her stood a magnificent silver guardian. Not tiny, not fluffy. Lumina, the Guardian King. His wings stretched farther than the palace itself. His crown shimmered with 7 stars. He looked powerful enough to shake mountains. Yet, he was gently allowing tiny kittens to climb across his enormous paws. One kitten slid down his tail laughing. Another tugged playfully on one giant A. Lumina pretended to lose balance. The kittens squealed with delight. Captain Orion smiled. He was never feared. Lady Lysera answered softly. He never wanted to be. The vision changed. Darkness covered the kingdom. The eclipse attacked. Fire spread across the city. Guardians fought desperately. The sky turned black. Young Velune and Vespa, still tiny kittens, cried as soldiers carried them away. Lady Lysera knelt before Lumina. She rested both paws against his forehead. My friend. Lumina lowered himself. Their foreheads touched. Then, she whispered something no one else could hear. Lumina's eyes widened. He shook his great head. No. Though no sound escaped him, everyone understood. He refused. Lysera smiled sadly. I know. She gently stroked his face. But I need you to become small. Captain Orion blinked. What? The memory continued. 7 guardians gathered around Lumina. Their combined light surrounded him. His colossal form slowly shrank. Smaller, smaller, smaller still. Until a tiny fluffy creature sat where the mighty Guardian King had once stood. Exactly like Lumo. The little guardian looked around in confusion. Lady Lysera hugged him tightly. You'll forget everything. But you'll keep one thing. She smiled through tears. Your kindness. The memory dissolved. The sanctuary returned. Nobody spoke. Hazel wiped away tears. So, Lumo chose this. Lady Lysera's voice answered. He insisted. Captain Orion looked down at the tiny creature. You gave up all that power to protect Hope. Lumo tilted its head. Emma. It clearly had no memory of making such a choice. Velune knelt beside him. You've always been brave. Lumo smiled happily, then rubbed against her cheek. Suddenly, the sanctuary shook violently. Not because of Lumo, because something had forced its way inside. A loud explosion echoed through the mountains. Crystal shattered. Captain Orion spun toward the entrance. No! Black smoke poured through the temple doors. Shadow hunters, dozens of them. Behind them walked Headmaster Cedric Thornclaw. The entire group froze. Hazel gasped. Headmaster. Cedric calmly brushed crystal dust from his robes. His warm smile hadn't changed. Good afternoon. Bramble stared in disbelief. You followed us. Cedric chuckled. My dear students. I built Mooncrest. Did you really believe I couldn't find this place? Captain Orion stepped forward. You betrayed the academy. Cedric sighed dramatically. No, I outgrew it. Malric entered behind him. The two villains stood side by side. Neither looked pleased. Neither looked friendly. Velune noticed immediately. They don't trust each other. No, Vesper whispered. They never did. Cedric glanced sideways at Malric. Our agreement ends here. Malric smiled coldly. I expected as much. Captain Orion frowned. What agreement? Cedric slowly raised one elegant paw. The crystal sanctuary trembled. To everyone's horror, the floor beneath the 7 door symbols cracked. Dark roots spread beneath the ancient temple. I never wanted the moon throne. Cedric said calmly. I wanted something older. He pointed toward the glowing 8th symbol. I wanted that. The sanctuary itself suddenly cried out. Not in anger. In fear. The ancient voice echoed desperately. Seal the 8th door. Before it chooses. Cedric slammed his paw onto the crystal floor. The temple exploded with blinding light. A hidden chamber beneath the sanctuary opened. From deep within, a massive pair of crystal doors slowly began to rise. Unlike every other door, these were pure white, covered in silver vines, and engraved with a single image. Not of a guardian, not of a crown, but a tiny fluffy creature sitting beneath a moonflower. Lumo looked at the carving, then at himself, then back at the carving. Emma! He gently reached out one tiny paw. The enormous white doors began opening by themselves. The enormous white doors slowly creaked open, not outward, inward, as though welcoming someone home. A warm silver glow spilled across the crystal sanctuary. It wasn't blinding. It felt comforting, like returning home after being lost for a very long time. Every flower growing between the crystal stones bloomed at once. Even the cracked pieces of the temple began repairing themselves. The sanctuary wasn't defending itself. It was celebrating. Cedric Thornclaw's smile widened. Excellent. He stepped confidently toward the opening. So this is the true inheritance. Captain Orion immediately blocked his path. You'll go no farther. Cedric sighed. You've always been loyal. He almost sounded disappointed. Unfortunately, loyalty has limits. With a casual wave of his paw, hundreds of crystal vines burst from the floor. Captain Orion slashed through the first wave, then the second. But more kept coming. Within seconds, they wrapped around his sword, his legs, his arms. The veteran ranger struggled. The vines weren't hurting him. They were simply holding him still. Hazel and Bramble rushed forward. We'll help. More vines emerged. Soft, gentle, impossible to break. Soon they too were held in place. Hazel frowned. They're not dark magic. Lady Lysera's voice answered quietly. No. The sanctuary refuses unnecessary violence. Lumo waddled curiously toward one of the glowing vines. Emma! It poked the vine with one tiny paw. The vine immediately let go of Captain Orion. Captain Orion blinked. Thank you. Lumo smiled proudly, then wandered over to Hazel. Poke. The vines released her too. Then Bramble. Poke. Released. Captain Orion laughed. The mighty Guardian King. Armed with the power of tiny boops. Hazel giggled. It works. Lumo puffed out its fluffy chest proudly. Apparently, booping things was serious business. Cedric's smile disappeared. This sanctuary obeys him. Malric quietly folded his arms. I warned you. Cedric ignored him. Instead, he stepped directly before the glowing white doorway. If the sanctuary recognizes only him, then I'll simply take him. Before anyone could react, golden chains erupted from Cedric's sleeves. They shot toward Lumo. Fast. Too fast. Lumo. Velune leaped forward. She wasn't fast enough. The chains reached the tiny guardian. Then, stopped, not because of magic, because Vespa caught them with her bay paws. The chains wrapped around her wrists instead. Cedric frowned. You. Vespa calmly pulled the chains tighter around herself. If you want him, you'll have to go through me. Cedric smiled coldly. That was always the plan. The sanctuary trembled. The ancient voice echoed through every chamber. The door chooses. The door is never taken. The white doors opened wider. Inside, no treasure waited, no throne, no weapon. Only a single moonflower, growing alone in a field of silver grass beneath an endless pastel sky. Captain Orion whispered, That's it. Lady Lysera smiled gently. Watch. Lumo slowly walked toward the flower. Emma. It sniffed the tiny blossom. The flower gently leaned toward the little guardian, as though greeting an old friend. Then, it bloomed. One flower became two. Two became 10. 10 became hundreds. Within seconds, the entire endless field burst into bloom. The fragrance drifted through the sanctuary. The cracked crystal walls repaired themselves completely. Broken statues stood once more. Dark stains vanished from the floor. Even Vesper's eclipse mark glowed more faintly. Hazel gasped. It's healing everything. The sanctuary spoke again. The 8th door is not a place. The silver light intensified. It is a choice. Velune listened carefully. The voice continued. The 1st door remembers. The 2nd door trusts. The 3rd protects. The 4th forgives. The 5th endures. The 6th unites. The 7th restores. A long pause followed. Then, the sanctuary whispered. The 8th. Lumo looked up. A tiny moonflower rested behind 1A. Emma. Loves. Complete silence. The meaning settled over everyone. There had never been an 8th door. Because love was never meant to be another trial. It was meant to exist. Inside every other one. Cedric's face twisted with frustration. Ridiculous. You expect love to defeat power. He struck the crystal floor with both paws. Dark energy exploded through the sanctuary. Moonflowers withered. Crystal cracked. The white doorway flickered. Malrek frowned. Cedric. Stop. Cedric ignored him. If I cannot possess the door, I'll destroy it. Captain Orion's eyes widened. He'll collapse the sanctuary. Lumo looked at the frightened moonflower. Its tiny ears drooped. The flower was dying. Without hesitation, the little guardian gently hugged it. Emma. Silver light spread from the tiny embrace. Not a violent explosion. Not a great beam of magic. Just warmth. The single moonflower stood tall again. Then every flower in the endless field bloomed brighter than before. Cedric's dark magic simply disappeared. Not defeated. Accepted. Like darkness fading beneath sunrise. The sanctuary's voice became stronger than ever. The guardian king has remembered. Lumo blinked. Remembered? A faint image flashed through its mind. Lady Lysera laughing. Little kittens climbing over giant silver paws. A promise beneath 2 moons. Then, one word, not spoken aloud. Felt. Protect. Lumo smiled. For the first time. Not with innocent confusion. With quiet understanding. High above the sanctuary, every crystal bell rang together. Across Etheria, ancient guardians lifted their heads. The 3rd door had awakened. Far away, Arcturus smiled beneath his crystal lake. The little king has taken his first step home. Deep within Mooncrest Academy, the ancient chains imprisoning the colossal guardian beneath the earth cracked again. One, then another, then a third. Lord Malrek heard them. His face lost all color. No. It cannot awaken this early. But the greatest surprise came from Vespa. She looked at Lumo, then at Velune, and smiled. I finally understand. Velune blinked. Understand what? Vespa gently took her sister's paw. The throne was never waiting for a queen. She looked toward the tiny guardian surrounded by blooming moonflowers. It was waiting for a family. The moonflowers swayed gently. The sanctuary glowed brighter than ever. For one brief moment, it felt as though the world had finally begun to heal. Then, a sharp pain shot through Velune's chest. She gasped. The silver pendant around her neck pulsed violently. Not with warmth, with warning. Lady Lysera's expression changed instantly. No. Captain Orion stepped forward. What is it? Lysera looked toward the western horizon. Mooncrest. At that exact moment, hundreds of miles away, Mooncrest Academy's warning bell rang. Once, twice, then without stopping. Students poured from classrooms in confusion. Professors looked toward the sky. A massive wall of black clouds surrounded the academy. Not natural clouds. An army. Thousands of shadow hunters marched across the hills. Corrupted beasts thundered behind them. Above them, dark wyverns circled like vultures. Professor Hazelwisk whispered, "We're under attack." Inside the headmaster's tower, the remaining teachers searched desperately. Every secret passage, every hidden room, every enchanted vault. They found only one thing. An old journal. Its first page read, "Property of Cedric Thornclaw." The oldest professor slowly opened it. His paws began trembling. Oh. No. What is it? He looked up in horror. Cedric has been planning this for 40 years. Back at the Skyglass Sanctuary, the crystal walls suddenly displayed Mooncrest as though it were reflected in a giant mirror. Everyone watched. Thousands of frightened students gathered in the central courtyard. Some held practice wands. Others clutched books. Many had never fought before. A little grey kitten asked nervously, "Are we going to die?" An older student knelt beside her. No. Though. He wasn't sure he believed it. Captain Orion clenched his jaw. "I have to get back." Lysera slowly shook her head. "You cannot." He looked at her in disbelief. "My students are there. And if you leave now. She met his gaze. The third door falls forever. The veteran ranger closed his eyes. It was the hardest decision of his life. Suddenly, Arcturo's voice echoed across every sanctuary. Moonkeeper. Velune looked up. Arcturo's. The guardian's voice rolled like distant thunder. The first guardian asks permission. She frowned. Permission. To protect your home. Velune didn't hesitate. Yes. The response came instantly. Across lakes, mountains, forests, 7 ancient horns echoed throughout Etheria. Every legendary guardian heard the call. At Mooncrest Academy, the first shadow hunters reached the front gates. They raised enormous battering rams. The academy's magical barrier flickered. Cracks spread across it. One more strike, and it would fail. The frightened students backed away. Then, the earth shook. Everyone froze. A second tremor. Then a third. The shadow hunters stopped marching. The trees surrounding Mooncrest suddenly bowed outward. Something enormous approached. From Silverwood Forest, Arcturo's emerged. His colossal silver form towered above the academy walls. Moonlight shimmered across his magnificent menere. 6 celestial tails drifted gracefully behind him. Every flower blooming beneath his paws glowed with renewed life. The shadow hunters stared. Several instinctively stepped backward. Arcturo's looked at the academy. Then, very gently, placed one enormous paw before its gates. No one would pass. The corrupted beast roared. Arcturo's answered. Not with anger. With authority. A single roar echoed across the valley. The sound alone caused dozens of corrupted creatures to stop charging. Some began crying. Others slowly lowered their heads. They remembered. Back inside the sanctuary, Velune smiled through tears. They came. Lady Lysera nodded. They always do. But Arcturo's wasn't alone. From the northern mountains, a flock of crystal griffins descended like glittering comets. From the rivers, ancient river serpents coiled around the academy walls, forming living barriers. Moon wolves appeared from every direction. Stone rams climbed impossible cliffs. Sky whales floated among the clouds above Mooncrest, their gentle songs strengthening the academy's protective barrier. One by one, every guardian Velune had ever shown kindness to answered her call. Not because she commanded them, because they chose to. Inside the academy, students watched in stunned silence. One tiny orange kitten whispered, "They're protecting us." A professor smiled. "No, they're protecting." She looked toward the distant horizon where Velune had disappeared days earlier. Their moonkeeper. Back at the sanctuary, Lumos suddenly became unusually quiet. The tiny guardian stared toward Mooncrest. Its silver eyes shimmered, not with tears, with memory. Another fragment surfaced. A battlefield. Arcturo standing beside him. Lady Lysera laughing as young guardians raced through moonlit gardens. "A promise. If ever I cannot stand. Stand for me." Lumo whispered. "Not MRP. Not even lies. This time, a clear sentence. Thank you." Everyone turned. The tiny creature looked startled. It placed one tiny paw over its chest. "I remember. Just one name. Arcturo's." Far away, the great guardian suddenly smiled. He had heard, across impossible distance. His king had remembered him. The moment was interrupted by a sharp crack. The sanctuary shook violently. Captain Orion looked toward the great crystal doors. The white light was fading. Lysera's expression darkened. "No. The third door." She looked toward the eastern mountains. "It isn't awakening. It's being forced open." Vespa's golden eyes widened. "That's impossible." "No." Malrek whispered quietly. "It isn't." Everyone looked at him. For the first time, there was no pride in his face, only dread. He slowly closed his eyes. "I know. Who is opening it?" A cold wind swept through the sanctuary. The mysterious white-robed cat standing upon the gigantic sapphire raven finally landed outside the crystal temple. She stepped gracefully onto the bridge. Her long white fur shimmered beneath the moonlight. Her eyes, one silver, one sapphire, were ancient, calm, and unreadable. The gigantic raven folded its wings behind her. Every guardian in the sanctuary lowered its head, not in fear, in respect. Even Lady Lysera bowed ever so slightly. Velune blinked in confusion. "You know her?" Lysera smiled sadly. "Very well." The white-robed cat returned the smile. "It has been a long time, old friend." Then she turned toward Velune. "And at last, I meet the last daughter of the moon." The crystal sanctuary grew still, not because of fear, because every living creature recognized the newcomer. The white-robed cat walked with quiet elegance across the crystal bridge. Her long ivory fur shimmered with pastel shades of silver, pale blue, and soft lavender. Behind her, the gigantic sapphire raven folded its wings, each feather sparkling like a night sky filled with stars. Velune had never seen anyone so calm, or so powerful. The mysterious cat stopped a respectful distance away. Her silver and sapphire eyes rested gently on Lady Lysera. They smiled at one another, not as strangers, as old friends. "It has been too long." Lysera nodded. "Far too long, Celine." Velune repeated the unfamiliar name. "Celine." The white-robed cat inclined her head. "I am Celine, the first keeper." Captain Orion's eyes widened. "The keeper of the 8 doors." Celine smiled softly. "I see someone still remembers." Hazel whispered to Bramble. "I thought the moonkeepers created the doors." Bramble slowly shook his head. "No. I think they only protected them." Celine overheard. "Correct." She gently rested one paw on the crystal floor. The doors existed long before kingdoms. They belonged to no ruler, no army, no guardian. They answer only. She looked directly at Velune. To the choices made by the heart. Lumo toddled toward Celine without hesitation. "MRP. Captain Orion instinctively reached out. Lumo, wait. Too late. The tiny guardian climbed straight into Celine's lap. Everyone held their breath. Celine laughed. A warm, genuine laugh. So. She gently scratched beneath Lumo's chin. You still trust everyone? Lumo purred loudly. Then curled into a tiny fluffy ball and promptly fell asleep. Celine smiled. Some things truly never change. Velune blinked. You knew him? Celine looked down at the sleeping guardian. I knew Lumina. Before anyone called him king. The sanctuary fell silent again. He wasn't born the strongest. He wasn't chosen because he was powerful. He became guardian king. Because he was the first to protect someone weaker than himself. She stroked Lumo's tiny head. And after thousands of years. He still does. Malrek lowered his gaze. For the first time. He looked ashamed. Celine noticed. You remember that day? Malrek didn't answer. She continued anyway. You and Lumina trained together. Velune looked at Malrek in disbelief. You knew each other. The old warrior slowly closed his eyes. We were brothers. The words echoed through the sanctuary. Captain Orion whispered. What? Another memory blossomed within the crystal walls. Two young guardians sparred beneath a moonlit tree. One silver, one dark gray. Lumina laughed as Malrek tackled him into the grass. The two wrestled like playful cubs. Lady Lysera watched nearby, smiling. They argued every day. Celine said. But they never ended a day angry. The memory shifted. The eclipse attacked. Fire consumed the kingdom. Malrek stood before a collapsing bridge. On one side, hundreds of frightened kittens. On the other, his own family trapped beneath burning ruins. He couldn't save both. He hesitated. Just for a moment. Lumina didn't. The great silver guardian rushed toward the kittens first. Lady Lysera rescued Malrek's family. But Malrek never forgave himself. The memory faded. Tears shimmered in Malrek's mismatched eyes. I was afraid. His voice cracked. For the first time in my life. I was afraid. Celine nodded. Fear isn't what changed you. You let guilt become your master. Malrek stared silently at the floor. I believed. If I controlled everything, no one would ever be lost again. Lady Lysera answered gently. But control was never the cure. Velune slowly stepped toward Malrek. Captain Orion looked alarmed. Velune. She shook her head. He needs to hear this. She stood before the old warrior. You've caused terrible pain. Malrek said nothing. But. She took a slow breath. I don't think you started out wanting to hurt anyone. The sanctuary became perfectly still. Malrek looked up. No hatred met his eyes. Only compassion. The same compassion Lysera had once shown him. For the first time in 1,000 years, the old warrior broke. He fell to one knee. I don't know how to stop. His voice was barely audible. I've been walking in darkness. For so long. Before Velune could answer, Cedric Thornclaw laughed. A sharp, cold laugh. Pathetic. Everyone turned. The former headmaster slowly applauded. So this is how legends end. With apologies. He stepped onto the crystal floor. Dark energy gathered around him. You always misunderstood history. He looked toward the 8 doors. You believe they existed to protect the world. His smile widened. They're locks. Captain Orion frowned. Locks. Cedric raised both paws, keeping something inside. The sanctuary trembled violently. Celine's calm expression finally changed. No. Cedric laughed louder. Oh yes. He slammed both paws onto the crystal floor. The entire sanctuary shook. Every one of the 8 door symbols blazed with light. Not opening. Breaking. Cracks raced through the ancient seals. The sapphire raven spread its wings and screeched. Lumo awoke instantly. Emma! Celine's voice rang through the sanctuary. For the first time. Filled with urgency. Everyone away from the center. The crystal beneath Cedric exploded upward. Far below, hidden beneath every door, something enormous moved. Not with anger. With awakening. A deep heartbeat echoed through the sanctuary. Once. Then again. Then a third time. Every guardian in Etheria froze. Arcturus lifted his head toward the distant mountains. The star wolf lowered itself to the ground. Even the sky itself seemed to tremble. Cedric smiled with triumph. At last. The 9th seal is broken. Velune stared at him. There are only 8 doors. Cedric looked directly into her eyes. Exactly. He pointed into the darkness beneath the sanctuary. The 9th was never meant to be found. From the endless abyss below, 2 enormous silver eyes slowly opened. The 2 silver eyes stared from the darkness below. Ancient. Endless. Awake. The heartbeat echoed once more, shaking the skyglass mountains. Every crystal tower hummed. Every floating island trembled. Even the stars above seemed to dim. No one moved. No one dared. Cedric Thornclaw smiled triumphantly. At last. I found you. The enormous eyes slowly blinked. Not with anger. With curiosity. A deep voice rolled through the sanctuary like distant thunder. Who calls my name? Cedric stepped proudly to the edge of the abyss. I do. I have broken the 9 seals. I claim your power. The silence that followed felt endless. Then, the ancient being asked one simple question. Why? Cedric laughed. Because power belongs to those willing to take it. The silver eyes remained still. Then, closed. For a moment. Nothing happened. Cedric frowned. Did you hear me? The voice answered calmly. I did. A pause. Your answer was disappointing. Without warning, a gentle gust of wind rose from the abyss. Cedric frowned. Is that all? The breeze touched his robes. Every trace of dark magic surrounding him vanished. Just vanished. His smile faltered. What? He tried again. Dark energy gathered around his paws. The breeze returned. Gone. Again. Captain Orion blinked. It's cleansing him. Celine slowly nodded. No. It's refusing him. The great eyes turned toward Velune. Little Moonkeeper. Velune swallowed nervously. Why yes? Why did you open the doors? Everyone looked at her. This was the question. The true trial. Velune thought quietly, then answered honestly. I didn't. The great eyes blinked. I simply kept helping others. I wasn't trying to find power. I just didn't want anyone to be alone. Silence. Then, the great voice chuckled. A warm sound. Like mountains laughing. Correct. Cedric shouted. No. Ask her something difficult. The ancient being ignored him completely. The silver eyes shifted toward Lumo. The tiny guardian peeked over Valune's shoulder. Emma. The voice became impossibly gentle. Little king. Lumo blinked. The ancient being asked. What is the greatest strength? Everyone held their breath. Lumo tilted its head. Thought very hard. Then, climbed down from Valune's arms. It waddled across the crystal floor. Straight toward Cedric. Captain Orion reached out. Lumo. Too late. The tiny guardian stopped before the stunned former headmaster. Cedric sneered. What are you doing? Lumo looked up. Then, reached both tiny paws upward, offering a hug. The sanctuary fell silent. Cedric stared. His voice caught. Lumo smiled. MRP. The ancient voice spoke. That is the correct answer. A brilliant silver light filled the sanctuary. Lumo wasn't hugging an enemy. He was hugging someone who had forgotten how to be loved. Cedric stood frozen. Memories flooded back. His first day as a young teacher, helping frightened students, laughing with colleagues, dreaming of making Mooncrest a place where every young cat belonged. When had he changed? He couldn't remember. A single tear rolled down his face. Then another. He slowly sank to his knees. What have I become? Lumo simply hugged him tighter. The abyss began glowing. The enormous owner of the silver eyes slowly rose into view. Everyone gasped. It wasn't a monster. It wasn't a guardian. It was a colossal tree, larger than mountains. Its silver branches stretched into the heavens. Its roots shimmered beneath the earth. Its leaves contained tiny stars. Lady Lysera smiled. The World Tree. Celine bowed deeply. So you have awakened. Ancient One. The World Tree spoke. I was never asleep. I was waiting. One immense branch reached toward Velune. Upon it rested a simple silver circlet woven from moonflowers. No jewels, no gold, only living flowers. The World Tree asked, will you rule? Velune looked at the crown, then slowly shook her head. I don't want to rule anyone. The sanctuary became silent. The World Tree smiled. Its leaves shimmered like thousands of tiny stars. Correct. The circlet floated gently onto Valune's head. It became lighter than a feather, barely noticeable. Then lead. The World Tree turned toward Vespa. The black vines of the eclipse mark still wrapped around her wrist. One silver leaf drifted downward, landing softly upon the mark. The dark vines dissolved completely. Vespa stared in disbelief. I'm free. Velune immediately embraced her. This time, neither sister cried from sadness, only relief. The World Tree's attention shifted toward Malrek. The old warrior lowered himself onto both knees. I have no excuse. I only have regret. The World Tree remained silent, then asked, will you spend the years remaining repairing what you broke? Malrek nodded, without hesitation. If they will allow me. Captain Orion looked toward Velune. She understood what he was asking. She smiled gently. Everyone deserves the chance to choose differently. Malrek lowered his head. For the first time in 1,000 years, the weight on his heart began to lift. The World Tree looked at Lumo. The tiny guardian was now asleep in Cedric's lap after exhausting itself with all the hugging. The great tree laughed softly. Guardian King. You still refuse to change. Lumo yawned. Emma. Without opening its eyes, it reached one tiny paw toward Velune. She held it. Immediately, the little guardian smiled in its sleep. The World Tree whispered. Exactly as it should be. Far across Etheria, the remaining doors glowed. One by one. The third. The fourth. The fifth. The sixth. The seventh. They had not been unlocked by force. They had awakened. Because the world had remembered something it had nearly lost. Hope. The World Tree's silver branches stretched across the heavens. Its leaves shimmered like countless tiny stars. Across Etheria, darkness began to retreat. Not in a single wave. Little by little. Village by village. Forest by forest. The world breathed again. At Mooncrest Academy, the black storm clouds finally disappeared. Warm sunlight broke through the sky. Students slowly stepped outside the academy gates. Arcturus remained seated where he had guarded them. The colossal guardian lowered his head as dozens of nervous kittens approached. One tiny calico kitten whispered, May I pet him? Arcturus smiled. Of course. The little kitten gently touched his nose. Within moments, every frightened student surrounded the great guardian. Some hugged his enormous paws. Others climbed onto his tails. The guardian simply laughed, his deep voice echoing across the valley. Fear had become wonder. Inside the skyglass sanctuary, the wild tree slowly lowered one great branch. A single silver seed drifted into Velune's paws. This, Celine explained, is a heart seed. What does it do? It grows wherever kindness is planted. Velune smiled. Then I'll plant it at Mooncrest. The world tree's leaves rustled happily. Cedric Thornclaw quietly stood. The darkness that had once surrounded him was gone. He looked older now. Not in body, in spirit. He slowly removed the headmaster's silver crest from his robe, walking toward Velune. He held it out with both paws. I don't deserve this anymore. Velune looked at the crest, then gently closed his paws around it again. No. Cedric blinked. You don't deserve to wear it. She smiled kindly. Until you earn it back. Captain Orion smiled. Hazel nodded approvingly. Cedric lowered his head. I understand. It wasn't forgiveness. It was a second chance. And he intended to spend the rest of his life earning it. Malric stepped forward next. The old warrior removed his black cloak. He laid his broken insignia at the foot of the world tree. I have no kingdom. The world tree answered. Then build homes. I have no army. Then protect families. I have no throne. Then walk beside those who do. Malric closed his eyes. For the first time in centuries, he smiled without bitterness. Vespa quietly approached Velune. The two sisters stood together overlooking the floating mountains. So, Velune laughed softly. We finally met. Vespa smiled. We've already missed 1,000 birthdays. Velune pretended to think. You'll have to make them all up. I was hoping you'd say that. The sisters embraced once more. This time, there were no tears, only joy. Lumo suddenly bounced between them. MRP. The tiny guardian looked from one sister to the other, then proudly placed one paw on each of their feet, as if officially announcing, family reunited. The sisters laughed. Vespa scratched behind one tiny A. Velune scratched behind the other. Lumo purred so loudly it echoed through the sanctuary. Several days later, the heroes returned to Mooncrest Academy. What they found surprised them. The students hadn't waited. Together, they had already begun rebuilding. Broken classrooms were repaired. Gardens had been replanted. The academy gates stood stronger than before. Every student stopped working as Velune entered. Silence spread across the courtyard. Then, the little grey kitten who had once asked if they were going to die stepped forward. She carried a tiny moonflower in a clay pot. I grew this. For you. Velune knelt, accepting the gift carefully. Thank you. The little kitten smiled. My friends don't think black cats are unlucky anymore. Velune looked around. Dozens of students nodded. One young tuxedo cat grinned. My little brother wants black fur when he grows up. Everyone laughed. That evening, Mooncrest held the largest celebration in its history. Pastel lanterns floated into the night sky. Music filled every garden. Guardians mingled peacefully beside students. Crystal griffins allowed kittens to polish their feathers. Moonwolves played gentle games of chase. Even Arcturus patiently accepted flower crowns placed upon his magnificent menhir. He wore every single one proudly. Captain Orion couldn't stop laughing. They suit you. I know, Arcturus replied with perfect seriousness. Near the edge of the celebration, Celine prepared to leave. The sapphire raven waited quietly. Velune hurried over. Will I see you again? Celine smiled. When the world needs a keeper. She looked toward Lumo. The tiny guardian was chasing glowing fireflies through the garden. You won't be alone. I know. Celine nodded. You never were. She climbed gently onto the raven's back. With one powerful beat of its enormous wings, the great bird disappeared among the stars. Late that night, Velune walked alone through the academy gardens. Lumo slept peacefully across her shoulders. The moonflowers glowed softly beneath the twin moons. She reached the center of the garden, then carefully planted the heart seed. The soil shimmered. Within seconds, a young silver tree sprouted. Tiny moonflowers bloomed around its roots. The whole academy glowed with gentle light. Lady Lysera's voice whispered one final time. You have done well. Velune smiled. I hope so. No. A warm breeze stirred the flowers. You loved well. The voice faded peacefully into the night. Months passed. Mooncrest flourished once again. Students from every kingdom arrived to study together. No creature was turned away because of its appearance. Black cats, white cats, tabbies, calicos, tuxedos, long-head, short-head. Every kitten belonged. Above the entrance to the academy, a new inscription was carved into white stone. The greatest magic is choosing kindness. One quiet afternoon, a frightened little black kitten arrived at the academy gates. Its head hung low. They said I'd bring bad luck. Before the kitten could finish, Velune smiled warmly. She opened her arms. Welcome home. The little kitten burst into tears and ran straight into the embrace. Nearby, Lumo looked up from chasing a butterfly. MRP. He hurried over and gently offered the newcomer one tiny moonflower. The kitten smiled through tears. And somewhere high above the clouds, the world tree's silver leaves rustled softly. The story of fear had ended. The story of hope would be told for generations.